The icy snowflakes scraped against my face like knives, and each breath came out as a stinging white mist. I stood on the viewing platform at an altitude of 500 meters, watching He Jingxiao patiently guide Qin Ru into poses with his DSLR in hand. He Jingxiao said, "Qin Ru, raise your hand a little higher. Yes, look at that snow peak over there." His voice carried through the howling wind, carrying a gentleness I hadn't heard in a long time. Qin Ru was dressed in a pure white down jacket, making her already delicate face even more captivating. She giggled sweetly, her voice dripping with honey. "Is director he always like this? I always feel like I don't look good in photos." "Very good." He Jingxiao even stepped forward to personally adjust the position of her scarf. "This will look better on camera." I stood in place, my fingers unconsciously touching my still flat abdomen. There was a secret there, one I had originally planned to tell him today, during our snowy mountain trip on our 3rd wedding anniversary. Now, I only felt a cold, churning sensation in my stomach. Qin Ru was his secretary, having worked for him for 2 years. Those subtle clues, the unfamiliar perfume on his shirt after late nights out, the increasingly perfunctory conversations with me, I wasn't unaware. I just clung to a ridiculous fantasy, thinking of the good times we once had, thinking maybe I was overthinking it, until this trip. When he insisted on bringing Qin Ru along, he called it a reward for her outstanding work and said she could help manage the itinerary. Such a lofty excuse. "Jingxiao," I spoke up, my voice scattered by the wind. "The wind is too strong. Shouldn't we head back to the hotel?" He Jingxiao turned his head, his brow furrowing almost imperceptibly. His eyes clearly showed annoyance at being interrupted. "Wait a little longer, the weather is rarely this good. And Qin Ru hasn't finished taking photos yet." After saying this, his gaze returned to Qin Ru, softening instantly. "The lighting is better over there, let's go." Qin Ru glanced at me, a flicker of smugness flashing in her eyes before she resumed her gentle demeanor. "Director maybe you should listen to Sister Cheng Yu. She doesn't look too well." "She's fine." He Jingxiao wrapped an arm around Qin Ru's shoulder, leading her toward the edge of the viewing platform where the view was even better. "You're just too cautious." I stood there like an ice sculpture, the cold in my heart a million times more frigid than the biting wind atop this snowy peak. I looked down at my hiking boots and touched the phone in my pocket, which held a photo of a pregnancy test. I had taken the photo this morning, wanting to surprise him. Now, it all felt bitterly ironic. Just then, a low, rumbling sound, as if rising from the depths of the earth, faintly echoed. At first, it was very soft, like distant thunder. He Jingxiao and Qin Ru had their backs to the mountain range, focused on framing their shot, and didn't hear it, but I did. Having grown up in the north, I had an almost instinctive awareness of snow. This sound was wrong. I abruptly looked up at the massive, seemingly peaceful snow slope above us. "Jingxiao," I raised my voice, sharp with an urgency I hadn't realized I possessed. "There's a sound. Come back. Get away from the edge." He Jingxiao turned around, his face clearly displeased at being disturbed again. "Cheng Yu, don't overreact." Before he could finish his sentence, the rumbling sound suddenly grew louder, like 1,000 horses galloping down. At the top of the distant snowy slope, a white crack instantly split open, followed by the collapse of an immense, thick mass of snow. Like a gigantic white wall of death, it poured downward, an avalanche. Time stretched unbearably long in that moment. Qin Ru let out a scream that could pierce eardrums. "President She shrank behind He Jingxiao as if startled, like a frightened rabbit, her hands gripping his arm tightly, her face drained of color and filled with terror. He Jingxiao's expression also changed. It was the most instinctive fear in the face of nature's might and the threat of death. The massive wave of snow, carrying a thunderous force, drew closer and closer, its icy breath seeming to already strike their faces. The next second, I saw a scene that would replay vividly in my mind for countless days and nights to come whenever I closed my eyes. He Jingxiao, almost instinctively, turned sharply in a completely protective gesture, pulling Qin Ru tightly into his embrace. He turned his broad back toward the direction of the oncoming avalanche, shielding the petite woman securely between his chest and the guardrail of the viewing platform. His movements were so swift, without a hint of hesitation. He didn't even glance in my direction, didn't call my name, didn't reach out a hand, not even a look of acknowledgement. I stood less than 5 meters behind them, like a completely forgotten outsider. The icy snow spray and fierce wind hit before the main wave, like countless fine needles piercing my exposed skin and stabbing into my instantly hollow heart. I watched his back as he tightly shielded Chin-Ru. Watched her trembling form buried in his embrace. In my ears, apart from the deafening roar of the avalanche, there was only the sound of my own blood freezing. Ah, so this is how it is. In that life-and-death moment, the person his instincts needed to protect was no longer me. That white wall drew nearer, and nearer still. The instinct for survival finally overwhelmed the crushing cold and dull pain. I threw myself sideways, rolling desperately toward a protruding, sturdy rock formation on the inner side of the viewing platform, clutching my head and curling my body tightly. Boom! The world was swallowed by endless, heavy white cold, suffocating, dark, and filled with boundless despair. I could feel the weight of the snow blocks crashing onto me, the agony of the air being rapidly stripped away, but none of it was as clear as the sound of something shattering completely deep within my heart. I don't know how long it lasted, maybe only a few dozen seconds. Maybe as long as a century. The roaring gradually ceased, leaving only the faint sound of snow particles rustling as they fell. Struggling desperately, I crawled out from the snow pile that had buried half my body. My hair, eyebrows, and eyelashes were all frosted over. I was breathing rapidly, my entire body icy cold, but miraculously, aside from some minor scrapes, I was largely unharmed. My first instinct was to cover my lower abdomen. It seemed still safe. I lifted my head to look at the spot where Jingxiao and Chin-Ru had been standing. It was now mostly covered by a thick pile of snow. My heart clenched violently, then sank into an even deeper chill. I was still worried about him. Chengyu, you are utterly ridiculous. President He, woo-woo. A faint, tearful voice emerged from the snow pile. Then the snow pile shifted. Jingxiao struggled to push through the snow, holding Chin-Ru as he stood up. His back was turned to me, covered in snow from head to toe. He looked somewhat disheveled, but Chin-Ru in his arms seemed unharmed aside from being badly frightened. He carefully placed her on relatively clean ground, anxiously checking her over. Chin-Ru, are you okay? Are you hurt? Does anything hurt? His voice held a kind of urgency and tenderness I had never heard before. Chin-Ru leaned against him, tears streaming down her face, trembling as she cried, President He, I was so scared, I thought I was going to die. Thank you for protecting me. She clutched his lapel tightly, as if holding onto a lifeline. Jingxiao patted her back, comforting her in a low voice. It's okay. I'm here, don't be afraid. The scene truly resembled a pair of star-crossed lovers who refused to abandon each other in a disaster. And I was like an audience member. No. Not even that, more like an unwanted backdrop. I slowly stood up, leaning against the cold rock, brushing the snow off myself. My movements were slow and steady, so steady it felt unfamiliar even to me. Jingxiao finally managed to calm Chin-Ru and seemed to remember there was a third person present. He turned his head, searching with his gaze, and saw me standing by the rock. His eyes first flickered with surprise, as if he hadn't expected me to be safe. Then that surprise was quickly replaced by a complex mix of relief, tinged with awkwardness and discomfort. He let go of Chin-Ru, took 2 steps toward me, and spoke, his voice already back to its usual steadiness, even carrying a hint of reproach. Chengyu, are you okay? Just now, in that situation, why didn't you stay close to you, so I could watch firsthand how you chose without hesitation to protect another woman while leaving me in danger? I looked at him. My face probably expressionless, because I could feel all my emotions: anger, sorrow, pain, despair, frozen solid the moment the snow wave hit, then crushed. All that remained in my heart was a desolate calm and a strange, icy clarity. I even managed a faint, twisted smile, likely uglier than crying. I'm fine, I said, my voice eerily calm, no trembling, no tears, just dry, like the stones in this snowy field. Jingxiao frowned, seemingly puzzled by my reaction. Based on his past understanding of me, I should have been crying from fear or throwing myself into his arms in relief. Chin-Ru also glanced over timidly, her eyes red and puffy, whispering, Sister Chengyu, I'm so glad you're okay. That was terrifying just now. Thank goodness for President He. I cut her off. my gaze sweeping past her directly to He Jingxiao, speaking in that unnervingly calm tone. Rescue should be here soon, right? I'm a bit cold, I'd like to go back to the hotel first. He Jingxiao was taken aback, probably not expecting that to be my first statement. He looked at my pale face, perhaps thinking I was just scared, then glanced at the chaotic snow piles around us and the faint sound of alarms in the distance, and nodded. It might be good for you to go back and rest first. I'll stay with Qin Ru a bit longer. She seems to have twisted her ankle and needs to be checked. Pei Qin Ru, even after sharing a life-and-death experience. His priorities remained crystal clear. Okay, I said, not uttering another word. I turned and walked toward the direction of the cable car station down the mountain, stepping through the deep, uneven snow, my back straight. Each step felt like treading on my own shattered heart. But strangely, it didn't hurt at all anymore. There was only cold, and a frigid resolve quietly rising from the depths of the ruins. Back in the hotel room, I locked the door, leaned against the cold wooden surface, and slowly slid down to sit on the floor. I didn't cry, not a single tear. I just sat there for a long time, until the chill in my hands and feet was gradually dispelled by the warmth of the room, until something new began to grow in the desolate landscape of my heart. Slowly, I stood up, walked into the bathroom, and turned on the hot water. Steam filled the air. In the mirror, my face looked pale, but my eyes held a clarity and unfamiliarity I had never seen before. I washed for a long time, trying to rinse away the cold of the mountain that clung to me and the bone-deep chill left by his unwavering betrayal. Wrapped in a bathrobe, I walked to the bedside, picked up my phone, and the screen lit up. The lock screen wallpaper was still a photo from our wedding day, him kissing my forehead with a smile. Back then, his eyes seemed to truly hold light, and truly hold me. With an expressionless face, I unlocked the phone, opened the photo album, and found the picture of the pregnancy test. My finger hovered over the delete button for a few seconds, then I backed out without deleting it. Instead, I opened another encrypted folder. Inside were jewelry design sketches I had secretly drawn over the years in my spare time, along with a document I had long prepared but never truly intended to use, a detailed list and notarized legal record of my personal assets, most of which were left to me by my parents before marriage, as well as investments I had made with my own savings after marriage. He Jingxiao had always thought I was just a tasteful, dependent housewife. He never knew that Cheng Yu was never a clinging vine. Looking at the smooth, vibrant design sketches on my phone screen, I gently placed my hand on my lower abdomen. I'm sorry, little one. Mom couldn't give you an announcement filled with anticipation and love, but Mom will give you a brand new world, one free of betrayal and coldness. A knock sounded at the door, followed by He Jingxiao's voice from outside, tinged with exhaustion and impatience. Cheng Yu, open the door. We need to talk about what happened today. Talk about what? About how you chose Qin Ru in a life-or-death moment, or about why I didn't break down and cry as you expected. I walked over but didn't open the door. Instead, I spoke clearly and calmly through the wood. I'm tired, I want to sleep. We can talk tomorrow if there's anything to discuss. Silence lingered outside for a moment before He Jingxiao's voice grew heavier. Cheng Yu, don't be difficult. The situation was so dangerous today. I was lucky to protect even one person. So the one who was abandoned deserved it, right? I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and when I opened them again, the last ripple of emotion in my gaze had settled into stillness. I'm not being difficult, I said. I really am tired. Good night, Jingxiao. No more sound came from outside, only fading footsteps. I returned to the bedside and began calmly packing my belongings, my documents, bank cards, that asset file, digital backups of my design sketches, one by one, methodically. The avalanche on the mountain buried not only the snow but also the last pitiful illusions and expectations Cheng Yu held for He Jingxiao and this marriage. From now on, I am just Cheng Yu, a mother to a child, a woman seeking justice from the past. Outside the window, the snow-capped mountain stood silent in the night, still sacred yet utterly, much like my heart in this moment. He Jingxiao, as expected, did not return to disturb me again. I sat by the floor-to-ceiling window in the hotel room, watching the cleared ski slopes outside, with scattered lights and an ink-black night sky. The phone screen lit up, a message from him. Chin-Ru sprained her ankle. I'm taking her to the medical station. I'll be back late. Order something for yourself. No questions, no explanations, just a cold notification. I stared at the message for a few seconds, then turned off the screen and tossed it aside. My stomach was empty, but I had no appetite. Subconsciously, I placed a hand on my lower abdomen, where I couldn't yet feel any signs of life. But I knew a little life was taking root there, the only real warmth I could feel at this moment. It was just as well, he was with Chin-Ru, giving me enough time and space. Unlike before, I didn't feel sad or lose sleep over his neglect, nor did I act out childishly to get his attention. Instead, I was unusually clear-headed. I returned to the bedside, opened the suitcase, and began carefully packing my clothes, skincare products, documents, and the jewelry he casually bought for me but I never truly liked. I didn't take any of it. These things, bearing the label of Mrs. He, should stay and rot along with that identity. I only took a few sets of the most comfortable, inconspicuous casual clothes, my own ID card, and passport. Then, from a hidden compartment in the suitcase, I retrieved an old, slightly worn leather document folder. Inside were my past and my confidence. One document was the proof of assets my parents left for me in a trust before their untimely passing years ago. The amount wasn't astronomical, but it was enough for me to live comfortably anywhere for many years. He Jingxiao had always known about this money but never paid it much mind, perhaps thinking it was just a pitiful sum for a woman to rely on, insignificant compared to the He empire he controlled. He had even generously told me to keep it for myself and spend it as I pleased. Without needing to inform him, the other document was the registration papers and related account information for an offshore studio I quietly established after marriage, using my saved allowance and a small investment dividend, with the help of a trusted university classmate who is now a lawyer. On paper, it was for art appreciation consulting. In reality, it was a hidden escape route I had prepared for myself, a symbol belonging solely to Chengyu, independent of the identity of Mrs. He. He Jingxiao knew nothing about this. I carefully placed these two documents, along with my passport and several private bank cards not linked to his accounts, into a hidden compartment of my backpack. After finishing all this, I picked up my phone. Without checking any social media, I directly dialed an international long-distance number. The phone rang a few times before it was answered, and a slightly surprised but quickly composed woman's voice came through. Yeah. Calling so late, is something wrong? It was my best friend, Sumo. After graduation, she married and moved to Switzerland, where she now runs a gallery in Zurich, living a carefree and happy life. We weren't in constant contact, but our friendship had never faded. Momo, my voice was calm, even carrying a hint of unexpected ease. I want to come to Switzerland to visit you and clear my mind. I haven't been very happy lately. Suman fell silent for a moment on the other end. She was an extremely intelligent and perceptive person, and she immediately sensed something unusual in my tone. You're always welcome here. There will always be a room for you. She didn't press for details but simply said decisively, what do you need me to arrange for you? Plane tickets, airport pickup. No need for plane tickets. I'll book them myself, I said. I might need to trouble you to find me a quiet, safe place suitable for long-term rest and recuperation. Renting or buying is fine. Budget isn't an issue. Long-term rest. Suman's voice grew more serious. Chengyu, tell me the truth. Is it your health? I'm pregnant. I interrupted her, directly revealing the secret. I just found out not long ago, but He Jingxiao doesn't know, and I don't plan on letting him know. There was a long, drawn-in breath on the other end of the phone, followed by Suman's low, suppressed curse. What did that bastard do this time? Did he get involved with that secretary surnamed Chin again? You wait. I interrupted her again, my voice still calm and steady. It's all in the past. I don't want to talk about him anymore. I just want to leave here, leave completely, and start over with my child. Suman fell silent again, this time with a silence filled with heartache. A few seconds later, her voice became incredibly firm. All right, come, don't be afraid of anything. I'm here, leave the house to me. I'll make sure to find you the coziest nest. Don't worry about the baby either. The medical environment here is excellent. I'll arrange everything. The last trace of uncertainty and floating anxiety in my heart settled firmly because of Suman's words. Thank you, man, I said, my throat finally feeling a genuine tightness. But it wasn't because of sadness, it was because of warmth. "Don't say things like that to me," Suman chided. "Hurry up and book your ticket. Send me your flight information. Be careful on the way." After hanging up the phone, I immediately opened the airline's website. I didn't choose a flight for tomorrow or the day after but directly booked a first-class ticket for a direct flight from the nearest major city's international airport to Zurich. Departing in 6 hours, I paid with my own card. Then, I logged into the offshore studio account and began to operate. I transferred the majority of the funds from the trust account in several batches through a few compliant channels into the studio's overseas account, ultimately consolidating them into a private bank account in Zurich that had been opened long ago. I had rehearsed these operations countless times in my mind, and now, I executed them with seamless fluidity. It was terrifyingly calm. By the time I finished, the sky was already turning pale grey. I did one final check. I went through the room once more, making sure I hadn't left behind any important items belonging to Chengyu as an independent individual. Then, I walked to the desk, tore off a piece of hotel notepaper, and picked up a pen. What should I write? Should I write why I'm leaving? Should I write what I saw? Should I write about my heartbreak and despair? No, those emotions no longer deserve to occupy even a drop of my ink or a moment of my time. I paused for a moment, then wrote only 2 lines. He Jingxiao. I will have the lawyer send you the divorce agreement. Once you've signed it, contact my lawyer. Take care. No salutation, no signature, no explanation, and certainly no tears. I folded the note in half, placed it on the most conspicuous spot on the nightstand in the room, and weighed it down with one of his platinum lighters. After finishing all this, I shouldered the backpack that held only essentials and documents. Took one last look around the luxurious yet cold suite. There was nothing here that made me reluctant to leave. I pulled open the door and walked out, gently closing the door behind me. The lock clicked softly, like a clean, decisive full stop marking the end of my 3-year marriage. The hallway was silent. I took the elevator directly to the hotel lobby without encountering any acquaintances. The front desk clerk smiled and nodded at me. "Good morning, Mrs. He, heading out so early?" "Yes. Just going for a walk," I returned a faint, impeccable smile, my steps never faltering as I walked straight to the taxi waiting at the hotel entrance. To the airport, international departures. I told the driver. The car drove away from the dreamlike resort at the foot of the snow-capped mountains, heading toward the airport. I watched the snow-covered mountains and forests recede rapidly outside the window, my mood as clear and empty as the aftermath of a blizzard. At the airport, I checked in, dropped off my luggage. I only checked one small suitcase, packed with some everyday clothes as a cover, and went through security. Everything went smoothly. I even had time to drink a cup of hot milk and eat a bit of whole wheat bread in the VIP lounge. For the baby, I needed nutrition. While waiting to board, my phone vibrated. The screen lit up with the name He Jingxiao. I watched the name flash until the call ended automatically. He called again almost immediately. I still didn't answer. When he called for the 3rd time, I held down the power button and turned off the phone. The world fell silent. The boarding announcement sounded. I picked up my carry-on backpack and followed the crowd to the boarding gate, handed over my boarding pass, walked across the jet bridge, and stepped into the cabin. A flight attendant gently guided me to my window seat in first class. I sat down and fastened my seatbelt. The plane began to taxi, accelerate, and lift off. As the feeling of weightlessness washed over me, I looked out the window at the city skyline, the mountains, and the place where an avalanche had once occurred and where my love had been buried, all growing smaller and smaller below. There was no reluctance, no looking back, only a resolute determination to break free from the shackles and move toward a new life. Goodbye, He Jingxiao. Goodbye, Mrs. He. From now on, the mountains are high and the rivers long. And there will be no more ties between us. Oh, wait, that's not quite right. There is still one tie. I gently placed my hand on my abdomen, which remained calm. The child and everything I deserve, these 2 things I am taking with me, will be my entire world and my bargaining chips for seeking justice in the future. The plane cut through the clouds, flying steadily at an altitude of 10,000 meters. Sunlight streamed in through the window, bright and warm. I asked the flight attendant for a blanket, draped it over myself, adjusted into a comfortable position. and closed my eyes. Unexpectedly, I fell asleep quickly, no nightmares, no sudden awakenings. I slept deeply and peacefully, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from my shoulders. I don't know how much time passed before the announcement of the plane's descent woke me. I opened my eyes, and outside the window was an entirely different scene. Azure lakes were embedded like gemstones in the dark green land, with neat rows of houses dotting the landscape. In the distance, the snow-capped peaks of the Alps shimmered brilliantly in the sunlight. We had arrived in Zurich. The plane landed smoothly, and as soon as I turned on my phone, it was flooded with missed calls and text notifications, almost all from He Jingxiao. From initial confusion to impatience, to a hint of anger, the last few messages carried a barely noticeable panic. Chengyu, where are you? Answer the phone. What does the note mean? What are you trying to pull? Chengyu, call me back immediately. Where exactly are you? Answer the phone. Let's talk. I read each message but didn't reply to any, simply clearing the inbox. Then I saw a message from Su Man. Landed yet? I'm waiting for you at the exit, holding a sign, afraid you won't recognize your old friend. Haha, the house is sorted, definitely a pleasant surprise. I couldn't help but smile and replied, just landed, heading out now to grab my luggage. Following the crowd toward the exit, I spotted a tall, striking figure from afar, dressed in a beige trench coat. She held a hand-painted, adorable sign with Chinese characters that read, "Welcome, Princess Yaya," complete with a smiley face drawn beside it. It was Su Man. After years apart, she looked even more mature and elegant, her eyes bright and her smile radiant. She saw me, her eyes lighting up as she waved energetically and hurried over. She wrapped me in a tight hug. You finally made it, you rascal. She patted my back firmly, her voice slightly choked with emotion, but she quickly let go and looked me up and down. You look all right, just a bit thinner. Come on, let's go home first. Without another word, she took my small suitcase and tightly linked her arm with mine, as if afraid I might run away, leading me toward the parking lot. We got into her comfortable SUV, buckled up, and drove off, seatbelt. As Su Man started the car, she couldn't help but begin her interrogation. Now you can tell me, right, what exactly happened? Did that bastard He Jingxiao get caught by me having an affair with that little secretary? You're pregnant and still putting up with this kind of treatment? No, the more I think about it, the angrier I get. Man. I looked out the window at the clean, exotic streets flashing by and began to narrate calmly. We went to the snowy mountains for our anniversary. He brought Qin Ru, and we encountered an avalanche. What? Su Man slammed on the brakes, then quickly released them, turning to look at me in shock. Are you okay? What about the baby? I'm fine. And the baby should be fine too. I continued in that matter-of-fact tone. The moment the avalanche hit, he instinctively shielded Qin Ru with his body and left me behind. The car fell into dead silence, with only the faint hum of the engine. After a long pause, Su Man slammed her fist hard against the steering wheel and cursed, F******, F******. That bastard, that piece of trash worse than an animal. Why didn't you tell me earlier? I'm going to go beat him to death. There's no need. I shook my head. It's all in the past. My leaving is the best answer. Su Man's chest heaved violently. Clearly furious, but she quickly regained control of her emotions, gripped the steering wheel again, and said firmly, right, leaving was the right choice. That kind of garbage man isn't even worth a second glance. Yeah, you did the right thing. From now on, we'll live well here. Let him die of anger. She paused, then looked at me cautiously. What about the baby? Have you really decided to keep it? Without hesitation, I replied, placing my hand gently on my lower abdomen. This is my child, mine alone. It has nothing to do with He Jingxiao. Su Man glanced at me in the rearview mirror, her eyes filled with heartache but even more with support and approval. Good, we'll raise it ourselves. I'll be the godmother and make sure to spoil him. Rotten. The car entered a quiet, beautiful neighborhood, surrounded by elegant single-family homes, shaded by lush trees, in a serene environment. Finally, it stopped in front of a two-story cream-colored cottage with a small garden and a terrace. We're here, Su Man said proudly. Take a look. Do you like it? A friend of my client owns this house. The owner lives in the U.S. most of the time and has entrusted it for rental. It's fully furnished, and the decor style is something you'll definitely like. Most importantly, The community is safe and quiet, with high-quality neighbors. It's not far from the hospital and supermarket. I've already rented it for you for 6 months. If you like it, we can discuss buying it later. I followed him out of the car, pushed open the white wooden gate, and walked into the small, exquisite garden. Even though it was winter, cold-resistant plants still dotted the garden with greenery. Inside, the house featured a simple and cozy Nordic style, with excellent natural lighting, clean, bright, and filled with a faint scent of lemon in the air. The master bedroom upstairs had an en-suite bathroom and a small balcony with a great view. Downstairs, there was a guest room, study, kitchen, and living room, while the basement housed a laundry room and storage space. Suman showed me around. So, what do you think? Are you satisfied? If not, we can keep looking. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window in the living room, looking out at the quiet street and the distant church spire. The warm sunlight bathed my entire body. There was no trace of He Jingxiao here, no Qin Ru's perfume, no suffocating cage of a marriage, only freedom, peace, and the hope of a new beginning. I turned to Su Man and gave her a genuine, relaxed smile. Man, this place is wonderful. I really like it, thank you. Seeing the smile on my face, Su Man seemed to breathe a sigh of relief and smiled back. I'm glad you like it. Come on, let's get settled first. Then I'll take you out for a good meal to welcome you and celebrate your new beginning. A new beginning, yes. This was just the start, Cheng Yu's new beginning, and the promise to the child in my womb. As for He Jingxiao, let him slowly go crazy over that cold note. My battlefield had already shifted. Winter in Zurich was crisp and clean, not like the destructive chill of the snow-capped mountains. On sunny days, sitting on the balcony of the second floor of the small house, wrapped in a thick cashmere blanket, holding a cup of hot milk, and gazing at the clear snowline of the distant Alps, the frozen cracks in my heart seemed to slowly mend in this tranquility. Su Man came over almost every day, bringing me nutritious meals in various ways, keeping me company, and helping me get familiar with the surroundings. With her by my side, I went to see a doctor, underwent a full checkup, and the results were excellent. The baby was healthy, and the estimated gestational age matched my calculations perfectly. The doctor, a gentle middle-aged woman, carefully explained precautions in accented English, her eyes full of encouragement. Su Man had already used her connections to arrange everything. All my information was properly protected, handled under the name of that offshore studio and paid for with my newly opened private Swiss account. No traces were left related to Cheng Yu or Mrs. He, from now on. You are you, an independent jewelry design studio owner from China, here in Switzerland for inspiration and rest. Su Man hastily handed me a stack of brand new business cards and hastily printed studio promotional flyers. Ju Yang is handling your identity documents more securely on her end. Use these for daily matters for now. Got it. I looked at the clean, bold U studio text on the card and the logo I had casually drawn myself, resembling both a crescent moon and a sprout, and nodded. Yu, it was part of my name, yet also a brand new, independent symbol. Ju Yang, is that the friend you mentioned? I asked. Su Man had brought up this name several times over the past few days, her tone filled with obvious admiration and trust. Yes, my husband's childhood friend, a sworn brother, Su Man said while helping me sort through the newly delivered baby product catalog. He's quite a formidable character, with a somewhat complicated background. His family runs a large business, but he himself seems to prefer investments and solving tricky problems. He has extensive connections and unconventional methods. Most importantly, she winked at me, he's tight-lipped, values loyalty, and absolutely despises men who bully women. I briefly mentioned your situation to him. He didn't ask many questions, just said to reach out anytime if you need help. I consulted him on matters like your fund arrangements and identity transition. Otherwise, how could we have sorted things out so quickly? Just as she was speaking, the doorbell rang. Su Man hurried to answer it, and from outside came her hearty laughter and a low, gentle male voice, supporting my back. Though there was still no visible sign, I slowly rose from the sofa. Walking in was a man who appeared to be in his early 30s, very tall, wearing a high-quality dark grey cashmere coat. He had handsome features, a healthy light tan complexion, and wore a pair of gold-rimmed glasses. Behind the lenses, his gaze was calm and sharp, yet carried just the right amount of politeness and detachment. In his hand, He held an exquisite paper bag that emitted a faint aroma of baked goods. Yeah, this is Ju Yang, Su Man introduced. Ju Yang. This is my best friend, Cheng Yu. But you can call her Yu for now. Ju Yang's eyes settled on me. He didn't scrutinize me excessively, merely giving a slight nod. The corners of his mouth lifting into a faint, appropriate smile. Miss Cheng. Hello, Man has been talking about you constantly. I took the liberty of visiting and brought some local pastries that are quite good. I hope they suit your taste. His Chinese was impeccable. His voice not loud but possessing a quality that made one feel at ease listening. Mr. Ju, hello, you're too kind. Please, have a seat, I responded politely, gesturing toward the sofa. Man often mentions you. I've really troubled you this time. It was nothing, he said. Ju Yang took off her coat and handed it to Su Man, revealing a well-tailored light-colored sweater and casual pants underneath. Her posture was relaxed yet not at all casual. She sat down in the side armchair, her gaze sweeping over the scattered jewelry design magazines and some sketches I had casually drawn in the living room. Miss Cheng has quite an interest in jewelry design, just doodling some ideas for fun. I didn't go into detail. Su Man brought over coffee and interjected. What do you mean? Doodling. Yaya draws beautifully. She's just too modest. Ju Yang. Don't you know quite a few people in the fashion and art investment circles? Maybe you could collaborate in the future. Ju Yang took the coffee with thanks and looked at me. If Miss Cheng has any work, feel free to show me anytime. Although Zurich isn't quite Paris or Milan, it still has a decent market and community. She paused. Then added, from a purely commercial perspective, good designs deserve to be seen. Her words were measured, expressing potential interest in collaboration without coming across as pushy or invasive. Thank you. If the opportunity arises, I smiled, not immediately taking the bait. My top priority now was to safely give birth to my child and adapt to the new environment. Revenge and career both required a more solid foundation and a clearer plan. Ju Yang smoothly changed the subject. Chatting about Zurich's weather, a few quiet parks suitable for walks, and recommending a highly regarded maternity nurse, she spoke clearly, offered useful information, and maintained a comfortable, somewhat distant friendliness throughout. After staying for less than half an hour, Ju Yang stood up to leave, saying she didn't want to disturb my rest. Before leaving, she left a private business card with just a name, Joe, and a phone number, for any needs in daily life, or other matters. She hinted meaningfully, her voice steady. You can call this number. Su Man's friend is my friend. After seeing Ju Yang off, Su Man closed the door and raised an eyebrow at me. So, reliable, right? Yes, she seems very dependable, I admitted. Ju Yang had a kind of clarity and strength that comes from experience. Not flashy but impossible to ignore. Having such an ally was undoubtedly fortunate. If she promised to help keep an eye out, she wouldn't just be paying lip service. Su Man linked arms with me. By the way, aren't you going to do something with those designs of yours? It's fine to stay home and draw all day, but having something to focus on, to distract yourself, would be good too. You're not alone anymore. You need to earn milk money for our little Monuo. Oh wait, I mean, a bright future. Her words were like a small stone tossed into the calm lake of my mind, which had only wanted peaceful rest, sending ripples outward. Yes, I couldn't just wait. I needed strength, capital, and a credible identity so that one day, when facing He Jingxiao, I wouldn't just be the wife who ran away, but an opponent he would have to acknowledge, even fear. The baby moved gently inside me, like a silent encouragement. My gaze fell on those scattered design sketches. Those lines and concepts were the only outlet I had allowed myself during the 3 oppressive years of my marriage. They were full of life, some rebellious, some gentle, some holding stories within. Perhaps they really could. In the following days, I still focused on resting, but the center of my life quietly shifted. I asked Su Man to help me find more professional jewelry design books, tools, and materials. I began working in the absolutely private studio Ju Yang had recommended, a quiet property under her name, slowly turning the sketches into more detailed designs, even attempting to create some pieces with soft wax, a simple model. With a stable physical condition and much improved energy during the 2nd trimester, I began systematically learning professional jewelry design software and studying the operational models of niche European designer brands. Ju Yang would occasionally drop by, offering very pertinent and incisive feedback on my designs from an investor's critical perspective, such as the market acceptance of a particular line, or the technical difficulty and cost of certain materials. He never asked where my design inspirations came from, sticking strictly to the matter at hand with a professionalism that was truly admirable. Meanwhile, through the secure channels provided by Su Man and Zhu Yang, I kept a close watch on developments back home. He Jingxiao, as expected, had not given up the search. Initially, his efforts were fueled by anger, probing through mutual friends, my long-estranged relatives, and even checking passenger information on all domestic flights. But he couldn't find any records for Chengyu. I had used another identity, one long prepared and made authentic through Zhu Yang's channels, to leave the country. His search gradually shifted from anger to a kind of frantic, anxious desperation. My lawyer and university classmates back home, absolutely reliable, informed me that He Jingxiao had sent people to every place I might have gone, but found nothing. He began to suspect I might have met with an accident. Mobilizing even more resources and even reporting to the police. However, during the missing persons investigation, the police discovered that large sums of money under my name had been legally transferred abroad. The trail pointed overseas, but the specific destination remained a mystery. This was clearly no accident, but a meticulously planned departure. Over the phone, my lawyer imitated the tone of He Jingxiao's representative. "Mister, he is extremely worried about his wife's safety. If you happen to contact Miss Chengyu, please convey that he hopes she will return home immediately. Everything can be discussed." The lawyer paused, lowering his voice. Yeah, she came to see me in person later. She looked quite haggard, asked me if you were pregnant. I sneered inwardly. Only now does it occur to you that I might be pregnant. When you were shielding Qin Ru during the avalanche, why didn't you remember I might be carrying your child? What did you say? I asked. I did exactly as you instructed, played dumb. The lawyer replied, stating only that I had entrusted him with handling the divorce. He seemed really shaken, left looking utterly lost. Good. Let him taste suspicion, unease, the anxiety of losing control. Qin Ru, it seemed, had not gotten her wish to ascend either. With He Jingxiao frantically searching for me, he naturally had little attention to spare for her. Reportedly, she tried to consolidate her position within the company by playing the savior and the victim, but only managed to alienate some of the old guard. He Jingxiao's mother, that formidable lady who had never much liked me, also seemed less than impressed with Qin Ru, finding her petty and lacking in grace. These bits of news came like sporadic battle reports, strengthening my resolve on my path in this peaceful life abroad. My collection of design sketches grew steadily. One day, after reviewing a portion of them, Zhu Yang suddenly said, "If you're willing, I can introduce you to a very influential buyer from the Paris Independent Designers Association. He'll be in Zurich next month. There's something quite special in your designs, an eruption after suppression, a sharpness beneath the gentleness. Someone might appreciate it. The opportunity is here." I looked down at the brooch design on my workbench, just beginning to take preliminary form in a wax model. It is inspired by the Edelweiss of the Alps, but the lines of the petals are not delicate. Instead, they carry a sharp, icy edge at the center. A reserved space symbolizes the stamen, adorned with a solitary and stubborn black spinel, which resembles me perfectly. "All right," I heard my own clear and resolute reply. "Please make the introduction, Mr. Zhu. You can call me Zhu Yang." "All right." He pushed his glasses up, revealing an extremely faint curve that could be considered a smile. "Also, regarding your earlier idea of wanting to establish a brand entirely your own, completely cutting ties with the past, I've prepared a simple proposal. I'll bring it for you to review tomorrow." He actually remembered the long-term vision I had casually mentioned and took it to heart. "Thank you, Zhu Yang." I sincerely expressed my gratitude. She nodded without saying more, then bid farewell and left. I walked out onto the balcony and took a deep breath of the crisp, cold air. The setting sun cast a golden edge on the distant snow-capped peaks, a magnificent sight. Gently placing my hand on my noticeably rounded belly, I could feel the strong movements of the little one inside. "Baby, can you feel it?" I whispered, as if talking to myself or making a promise. "Mom is growing stronger. We will have a brand new, beautiful life, and those who have hurt us." I didn't finish the sentence. But in my heart, a cluster of icy yet scorching flames burned even more fiercely. I am no longer that pitiful woman standing on the snowy mountain viewing platform, waiting for her husband to turn back. I am Cheng Yu. I am Cheng Yu, soon to be a mother, a designer about to have her own brand, and, one day in the future, a hunter who will make He Jingxiao pay a heavy price for his choices. A hunter's blade requires patience to sharpen, and I have both time and determination. Cheng Nuo came into this world on a spring morning. The process was more difficult than expected, lasting over 10 hours, but when that loud cry finally pierced the air of the delivery room, and the nurse gently placed the red, wrinkled little one on my sweat-drenched chest, all the pain and exhaustion were instantly overwhelmed by a surge of unfamiliar emotion. An extreme tenderness and an unprecedented strength took root in my heart simultaneously. I looked down at him, waving his tiny fists with all his might, his eyes not yet fully open but seemingly declaring his existence with every ounce of his strength. My fingertip lightly touched his warm cheek, and tears rolled down unexpectedly, not from sadness, but from a sense of near-sacred fulfillment. Hey, little Nuo Nuo, my voice was hoarse, filled with laughter and tears. Welcome to the world, I'm your mom. Su Man cried even harder than I did by the bedside, laughing and scolding. You little rascal, putting your mom through so much. Be good from now on. Okay. Ju Yang also came, standing quietly in the corner of the hospital room, watching us. A gentle smile flickered in her usually calm eyes. She brought a large bouquet of fresh lilies of the valley and an exquisitely crafted pure silver longevity lock for the baby. Cheng Nuo, my promise, my heart's voice. With a child, time seemed to accelerate, yet it stretched infinitely in every mundane detail of feeding, changing diapers, and soothing to sleep. The exhaustion was real, but the happiness of being wholly depended on and needed filled each day. I hired an experienced local nanny, Mrs. Margaret, to help with daytime care, allowing me some time to attend to my own affairs, and my own affairs finally reached their moment of breakthrough. Shortly after Cheng Nuo's first full month, the buyer from Paris introduced by Ju Yang, MS, Isabel, arrived in Zurich as scheduled. The meeting took place in the quiet studio provided by Ju Yang. I had carefully arranged the studio in advance, keeping decorations minimal, with only a few enlarged design sketches framed on the walls. On the work table, I displayed several of my most representative design samples made from wax molds and alternative materials, including the Edelweiss brooch, along with 2 other pieces, a pair of layered earrings inspired by shattered icicles, and a delicate bracelet mimicking the flowing lines of an alpine spring. I didn't wear any extravagant attire, opting instead for a simple black knit dress. My complexion still carried a postpartum pallor, but my eyes were clear and resolute. In my arms, I held Cheng Nuo, who had just been fed and was sleeping soundly. Su Man had offered to take care of the baby so I could focus on the meeting, but I declined. MS, Isabel, I said in the fluent English I had practiced for so long, my voice calm. Thank you for taking the time to come. These are my creations, and this, I glanced down at the sleeping infant, is the most important source of inspiration for them. My son, Cheng Nuo. Isabel was a French woman around 50 years old, dressed with an artistic flair. Her silver-gray short hair framed a sharp, observant gaze. She was first drawn to the baby in my arms, raising an eyebrow in mild surprise before shifting her attention to the design sketches on the wall and the samples on the display table. She examined them slowly and meticulously, occasionally picking up a sample to study it in her hands, holding it up to the light to observe the virtual inlay angles and the play of light and shadow. The studio was quiet, punctuated only by Cheng Nuo's occasional soft snores. After a long while, she set down the wax mold of the Edelweiss brooch and looked up at me. The initial scrutiny in her eyes had faded, replaced by curiosity and interest. These designs are quite intriguing, she said. They possess a contradictory beauty, fragility and resilience, coldness and tenderness, especially this flower. She pointed to the Edelweiss. It looks as though it might shatter at a touch. Yet the flow of its lines conveys a sense of defense and strength. Can you tell me what you intended to express through it? I gently patted Cheng Nuo in my arms, my gaze settling on the wax mold. Slowly, I replied, it grows at the highest snow line, facing the harshest blizzards. Its beauty stems from survival itself, Its delicacy is merely an appearance. At its core, it is a colder crystal, reformed after enduring shattering and extreme cold. I made no mention of the avalanche or He Jingxiao, but all those experiences were distilled into that explanation. Isabel listened quietly, her fingers unconsciously tracing the edge of another broken, cold earring. And what about this bracelet? It looks so fluid and gentle, like a whisper of the heart. I glanced down at the promise, a smile unconsciously curling at the corner of my lips. It was the path of a spring resuming its song after the ice melted. The flow and unstoppable force of life itself. Isabel nodded, not pressing further for the personal story behind the designs, a mark of a professional buyer's discretion. She turned her gaze back to me, her tone turning pragmatic. Do you have specific ideas for the craftsmanship implementation? As for the material budget, I was well prepared. I signaled to Ju Yang, who was acting as a temporary assistant today, and she handed Isabel a detailed proposal. It included suggested materials for each design, featuring distinctive and uniquely sourced gemstones like smoky quartz, peridot, and colored sapphires, paired with white gold or rose gold. The proposal also covered estimated costs, analysis of craftsmanship challenges, and even preliminary target customer profiles and pricing ranges. Most of this proposal came from me, but Ju Yang provided crucial insights and revisions on the financial model and market analysis. As Isabel flipped through the proposal, her surprise grew increasingly evident. She likely hadn't expected a young, seemingly frail Eastern woman who had just given birth to not only present emotionally resonant designs but also possess such clear and rational business acumen. Very professional, she remarked, closing the proposal and getting straight to the point. So, what is your brand positioning? What do you hope I or my channels can do for you? I took a deep breath. This was the most critical moment. The brand name I've chosen is Wish. It represents wishes and promises, and it also incorporates part of my son Mingli's name. The positioning is high-end, niche independent designer jewelry, telling stories of resilience, rebirth, and the inner strength of women. I'm not aiming for mass production. I want each piece to be unique and soulful. I looked into Isabel's eyes and continued. I hope that through your discerning eye and channels, the first collection of Wish can gain exposure in Paris and some niche boutiques across Europe. I don't need a large number of orders right away. What I need is to be seen by those who appreciate the emotions and stories behind the designs. I can manage the investment and production myself, which means I bear all the risks but retain full control and the soul of the brand. Isabel fell into thought. After a few minutes, she spoke again. How many designs do you plan for the first collection? 3 to 5, including the 3 you've seen. I'll refine 1 or 2 more designs. What about sample production? Do you have workshops you're familiar with, Mr. Ju can help me connect with reputable small precision workshops in Switzerland and Italy. I glanced at Ju Yang, who gave a slight nod. Finally, Isabel broke into her first genuine smile of the day, not a polite one, but one filled with the joy of discovering raw talent. You are very special and very clear-headed. There is commercial potential in your designs, but what moves me more is the sincerity within them. I rarely offer such opportunities to newcomers who haven't been tested by the market at all. He paused. But I'm willing to give it a try. I can provide you with introductions to 2 boutiques in Paris that share similar tastes, and give Wish a dedicated column in my seasonal recommendation booklet. As for whether they'll be selected for the shelves, that depends on the store owners and the market's response. This is enough, a precious starting point. Thank you so much, Ms. Isabel, I said sincerely. Don't thank me too soon. Isabel waved her hand, returning to her shrewd demeanor. The samples must be perfect, and the timeline must be on schedule. If your work receives some positive feedback in Paris, we can discuss the next steps. Also, she glanced at Cheng Nuo in my arms, her eyes softening for a moment. Take good care of your source of inspiration, and take good care of yourself. A designer's state is reflected in their work. After seeing Isabel off, only Ju Yang, Cheng Nuo, who was sleeping soundly, oblivious to the world, and I remained in the studio. Su Man rushed in from the next room, excitedly grabbing my arm. Did it work? Did it work? I saw the French woman's expression. It looked promising. We've opened the first door. I let out a long sigh of relief. Only then feeling the sweat on my back. I had been completely focused earlier, and now, relaxing, I felt exhausted. But more than that, I felt excitement. Juyang handed me a glass of warm water, her tone calm. A good start. Isabel has a sharp eye. If she's willing to give you a chance, it means your work truly has value. The real battle is ahead. Pattern making, stone selection, supervision. Every step must be flawless. I'll communicate with the workshop to ensure they deliver their highest standard, but the design details and final outcome need your personal attention. I understand, I nodded, taking a sip of water. The warm water soothed my dry throat. I will. Over the next few months, I entered a state of unprecedented busyness. Breastfeeding, taking care of Cheng Nuo, screening material samples from gemstone suppliers, repeatedly communicating with the workshop to revise wax molds and metal bases. Overseeing every detail of the setting. Often, when Cheng Nuo was asleep, I would be under the lamp checking design drawings, or holding him while video calling with Italian craftsmen to adjust a curve. Was it tiring? Of course. Sometimes, holding a crying Cheng Nuo and looking at the pile of tasks on the desk, I would feel a moment of confusion and helplessness. But every time I saw the silver plate of the Edelweiss brooch gradually taking shape, and the translucent grey sapphire refracting a cold yet resilient light in its preset position, every time I traced the winding, fluid patterns on the mountain spring bracelet, as if water were truly flowing, all the fatigue would be dispelled by a tremendous sense of accomplishment. I wasn't proving anything to He Jingxiao. I was building a solid and beautiful world for Cheng Yu and Cheng Nuo, a world that belongs to us. During this time, news from back home came in sporadically. He Jingxiao's search seemed to have hit a dead end, but it hadn't stopped. It was said that his company's business had been somewhat affected, because he was too distracted. Old Mrs. He was quite dissatisfied with him, believing that he had lost his mind over a woman who had run away, which was unbecoming. Qin Ru tried to take advantage of the situation, becoming even more attentive. She even learned to make soup and delivered it to his company. But I heard He Jingxiao reacted coldly. Once, during a routine discussion about the progress of the divorce agreement, my lawyer mentioned that He Jingxiao had been delaying signing it. In a strange tone, he said that He Jingxiao had recently been inquiring about matters in Switzerland, especially emerging trends related to jewelry design. It seemed he had even sent someone to attend a small exhibition in Paris. Had he noticed something? My heart sank slightly, but I quickly composed myself. Perhaps he had heard some rumors, or perhaps it was just part of his aimless search. Isabel's recommendation booklet hadn't been officially released yet, and Wish was still completely unknown. Even if he turned Europe upside down, he wouldn't be able to find Cheng Yu or Wish in a short time. Let him search. I told my lawyer, keep sending the agreement and remind him that the longer he delays, the more advantageous it is for me. That was the truth. Time was on my side. My brand was growing, my child was growing, while he was consumed by anxiety and suspicion. Finally, when the pregnancy was almost 5 months along, all 5 pieces from Wish's first collection were completed. The physical pieces were even more stunning than the design drawings. The grey sapphire set in the center of the Edelweiss brooch was like an ember wrapped in ice and snow. The pair of icy earrings had layered, staggered designs. When worn, the shifting light and shadows with movement seemed to capture the moment of shattering ice. Frozen in eternity, the mountain spring bracelet was soft, elegant, and incredibly comfortable to wear. I carefully photographed them and, along with the recommendation page provided by Isabel, which included her brief comments, placed them on Wish's newly built, extremely minimalist independent official website. The website wasn't heavily promoted, only quietly disseminated within a small circle through Isabel and Ju Yang's personal networks. Then came the waiting for the market, or rather, waiting for those who resonated with my designs to respond. Cheng Nuo seemed to sense my anticipation during those days. She was exceptionally well behaved, her big, grape-like eyes often curiously watching the shiny things on my workbench. One afternoon a week later, I was reading a picture book to Cheng Nuo when my phone's email notification chimed repeatedly. I picked up my phone, and my breath caught slightly. They were inquiry emails from 2 Parisian boutiques. They had expressed clear interest in the Edelweiss brooch and the mountain spring bracelet, asking about wholesale prices and minimum order quantities. Although the quantities weren't large, these were genuine, tangible orders. Immediately after, Isabel also sent a congratulatory email. Attaching a brief market feedback report, a few discerning collectors had noticed Wish. The was fresh, spirited, worth watching. Continue on your path. I put down my phone, picked up the Cheng Nuo, and couldn't help but kiss her soft cheek. My eyes grew warm. Nuo Nuo, look, I said softly, my voice choked up. Mom took the first step, in my arms. Cheng Nuo cracked a toothless grin, revealing a shameless smile as if cheering for me, outside the window. The Zurich sun was shining brightly. In the garden, the few Edelweiss seedlings I had planted had survived the harsh winter and bloomed with their first touch of pure white, tiny yet tenacious. Just like Wish, just like me, He Jingxiao, you must be overwhelmed in your world, but in a place you cannot see. I have already been reborn from the ashes and am beginning to make my mark. The show has only just begun. The first batch of orders received on Wish was like a shot of adrenaline injected into my veins. It wasn't about the money, the profit from those few orders was far less than the interest from my trust fund. What mattered was the recognition. The feeling that my voice and my story could be understood and cherished by someone in some corner of the world. This feeling filled me more than any revenge ever could. I threw myself into the follow-up work without pause. Contacting workshops to expedite production. For the first batch of orders, I chose a deep grey suede jewelry box with abstract mountain patterns subtly embossed on it, lined with white silk as pure as the first snow. I planned the small-scale production process while beginning to conceptualize the designs for the second season. Juyang introduced me to a local Swiss marketing consultant who specializes in niche brands, and we started carefully planning Wish's next exposure strategy. The goal was to steadily build a reputation without attracting excessive attention. Cheng Nuo changes every day. He's learning to roll over and unconsciously makes sounds like mama. When he sees the shiny things on my workbench, he reaches out his little hand to grab them. Every bit of his growth intertwines with every step of progress in my career, forming the most solid and warm foundation of my new life. Meanwhile, the storm across the ocean never ceases. But it's kept outside the glass wall I've carefully built. My lawyer, Qiao Wei, calls me every now and then. His tone has gradually shifted from strictly professional to one tinged with disbelief and a hint of satisfaction. Chengyu, what kind of spell did you cast on him? Qiao Wei whispered during an encrypted video call, his eyes gleaming. He Jingxiao has been acting like a madman lately. The divorce papers have been sent to him 3 times now. He still refuses to sign. But he's no longer rejecting them as forcefully as before. His lawyer privately hinted to me that He Jingxiao's mental state is very unstable. He's making frequent mistakes at work and has been questioned several times by senior executives during board meetings. I looked at Qiao Wei's face on the screen, slowly stirring the warmed milk for Cheng Nuo, and replied in a calm tone, he can't find me, that's all there is to it. For a man like He Jingxiao, who's used to controlling everything. Losing that control is probably harder to bear than losing love itself. It's more than just not being able to find you. Qiao Wei's voice dropped even lower, carrying a hint of gossipy excitement. Do you know what he did? He actually started offering a huge reward, using some less than official channels, to post missing person notices both domestically and internationally, looking for Mrs. He, Chengyu. The photos provided are from a few years ago, but the reward is shockingly high. The key is, he paused, he specifically mentioned in the notice that providing effective clues about Cheng Yu possibly being pregnant would double the reward. My fingers twitched slightly, causing the liquid in the bottle to sway. Cheng Nuo babbled in his crib, waving his little fists. He finally remembered I might be pregnant. Did it occur to him in a sudden wakeful moment during a sleepless night, or was it a suspicion that arose when he felt bored in Qin Ru's presence? Too late, He Jingxiao. And you're looking in the wrong direction. He's searching for a possibly pregnant, heartbroken Mrs. He who ran away and needs to be found and comforted. But the real Cheng Yu is already a mother, a rising brand founder, a hunter who has completely erased him from her future. Let him keep offering that reward. I picked up the baby bottle, having tested the temperature, and walked toward the crib, spending money for peace of mind. Or perhaps for self-satisfaction, whatever. You just need to send the agreement periodically and remind him of the legal consequences of delay. Also, I can drop a few vague hints about places I might have been, like South America or Australia. Qiao Wei immediately understood my meaning, realizing the mix of truth and falsehood. and would have his people running around exhaustively. However, Yaya was a bit worried. Would his madness one day actually lead him to Zurich? "Are you safe over there?" "I'm very safe." I picked up Cheng Nuo and handed him the bottle. The little one immediately started sucking contentedly. "The community security is excellent. Zhu Yang and Su Man have me well protected. Besides, I am now a designer for You Wish, a foreigner with legal residency and a career in Switzerland. As long as I don't slip up, it's hard for him to connect a single mother and independent designer with the possibly pregnant, heartbroken Mrs. He who fled. The greatest protection is the complete transformation of identity and the passage of time. That said, I didn't let my guard down. I informed Zhu Yang and Su Man, strengthened daily security patrols at the studio and residence, and Zhu Yang even used her network to watch for any investigative probes from China targeting Cheng Yu or suspicious Chinese women reaching Switzerland. He Jingxiao's madness didn't subside with time. Instead, it intensified. A few weeks later, Zhu Yang came to me with a slightly grave expression, bringing more concrete news. She was tracking the flow of funds. Zhu Yang sat across from me while Cheng Nuo played with blocks on the carpet. She didn't avoid speaking in front of the child, but her voice was steady and low. "Although you led the transfers and the methods were clean, if someone is willing to spare no cost and use unconventional means to trace back, they might still find clues pointing to the final receiving bank in Zurich. Of course, it's just a clue. He absolutely won't be able to access specific account information." My heart tightened. Will there be trouble? Not for now. Zhu Yang adjusted her glasses, her gaze behind the lenses as calm as stone. Swiss banking secrecy laws are no joke. Even if he knows the money ended up in Switzerland, he won't be able to find out who you are. However, this might narrow his search further to Switzerland, even Zurich. I've already made arrangements. If anyone tries to inquire about a Chinese woman matching your previous description in this area, they'll receive some misleading feedback. Misleading feedback? I raised an eyebrow. For example, someone might have seen a haggard, solitary Asian woman in Lucerne or Geneva, matching the description in his bounty, but Zhu Yang's tone was flat, as if discussing the weather. Or a source might hint that the lady may have left Switzerland for more remote northern Europe. In short, it will increase the noise and cost of his search. I understood this was a more sophisticated cover, actively releasing smokescreens to hide the real target even deeper. "Thank you, Zhu Yang," I said sincerely. Without her help, I might have escaped, but I could never have hidden so securely, calmly laid plans, or even counter-interfered with the hunter's sightlines. "We each get what we need," Zhu Yang said lightly, her gaze sweeping over Cheng Nuo, who was struggling to fit a round block into a square hole, his little face flushed with effort. "I'm also curious to see how far Wish will go." She looked at me, a faint, almost sharp glint flashing in her eyes. "And what expression will a certain gentleman have when he finally realizes that what he lost wasn't a canary in need of his protection, but a phoenix that has grown sharp claws and built its own kingdom outside his territory?" Her description was eerily accurate, even evoking a trace of cold anticipation that resonated within me. Qin Ru was not idle either. Based on the information Qiao Wei had subtly gathered from He Jingxiao's company, Qin Ru, seeing that I had been missing for a long time and He Jingxiao appeared distracted, seemed to think an opportunity had arisen. She became even more proactive in playing the role of the understanding confidant, attempting to insert herself into He Jingxiao's life and work. She even presented herself as his companion in some informal settings. However, the more eager she was, the more she appeared insecure and ungraceful. He Jingxiao's mother, that shrewd elder, was said to have publicly embarrassed Qin Ru at a family gathering, making remarks that criticized her for lacking propriety and being unfit for formal occasions. Some mid-level managers in the company who had initially adopted a wait-and-see attitude gradually began to show dissatisfaction with her. He Jingxiao's attitude toward Qin Ru became quite nuanced. He still kept her by his side to handle certain matters, but the protective instinct and intimacy that had erupted during the life-and-death crisis seemed to be rapidly eroded by the daily trivialities and the anxiety of searching for me. Perhaps that momentary impulse was more of an instinctive reaction to danger and a habitual protection of the vulnerable, rather than deep affection. Once the danger passed and the passion faded, what remained was likely just awkwardness and a mess. Moreover, My disappearance as the original spouse in such a decisive and bizarre manner became an even greater shadow looming between them. An unattainable person always lingers more in one's mind than one already in hand, especially for someone as proud and controlling as He Jingxiao. My disappearance was not a means to help someone achieve their goal or wish, often in the context of relationships, like helping a couple get together. Here, it implies that her leaving did not facilitate their relationship but rather complicated it. But the most thorough negation and betrayal, Qin Ru's companionship probably only served to constantly remind him of the existence of that betrayer. These fragmented pieces of information converged to me through various channels, piecing together a picture of chaos on He Jingxiao's side. I was like a detached spectator, occasionally adjusting the stage lights and sound effects. Watching the actors on stage struggle in an increasingly complex plot. My life, however, was completely different, orderly, fulfilling, and full of hope. The first batch of orders for Wish was successfully delivered, with excellent customer feedback. Some boutiques even placed restocking requests. The effect of the Isabel recommended catalog began to show, with a small but steady increase in traffic to the official website, and we started receiving scattered private inquiries. My marketing consultant and I decided to strike while the iron was hot. We carefully selected 2 European online fashion magazines that matched Wish's aesthetic and placed soft advertisements for the first season. We did not mention any tragic backstory, only emphasizing that the design inspiration came from the resilience and whispers of nature, focusing on the aesthetics and craftsmanship of the pieces themselves. Meanwhile, I began preparing to participate in a small but high-taste craft and design salon held locally in Zurich. This was an excellent opportunity for an offline showcase, allowing direct interaction with potential clients and peers. Ju Yang helped me secure the qualification to exhibit, while Su Man volunteered to bring Cheng Nuo to support me, of course, in the eye-catching way of being the godmother with an adorable baby. Everything was proceeding step by step, moving in a better direction, until one late night, I was awakened by Cheng Nuo's cries. After feeding him and soothing him back to sleep, I found myself unable to sleep, almost as if possessed. I opened that long unused old social media account belonging to Cheng Nu. The alternate account and main account had long been abandoned. As expected, there was an explosion of messages, countless inquiries, condolences, and probes from people I knew or didn't know. I scrolled through them expressionlessly and quickly until I saw He Jingxiao's account. He actually used that official account, verified as the CEO of the He Group, which almost exclusively posted business updates. 3 months ago, shortly after I left, he posted an extremely brief status update that undoubtedly caused a huge stir in his circle. Looking for someone. Cheng Yu, my wife, if seen, please contact. Generous reward offered. The accompanying photo was a picture of me from a few years ago, smiling quite brightly. The comments were already closed, but the number of shares and likes was shockingly high. One can imagine the public uproar at the time. The latest post, from a month ago, was a repost of a news article about a public welfare project by the He Group, appearing all businesslike. However, in his sparse following list, I spotted a glaring new name, Qin Ru. Qin Ru's account was filled with meticulously edited selfies, motivational work quotes, and subtle support for He Jingxiao's looking for someone post, likes and comments like, "Hope Sister Cheng Yu is safe, and take care of your health, President He," dripping with insincerity. The latest photo showed her arranging flowers in the reception area of He Jingxiao's office, with his blurred figure visible in the background. Looking at that photo, seeing Qin Ru's name in He Jingxiao's following list, the icy wind from the snowy mountain seemed to blow through time and reach me once more, but this time, I felt no chill or sting, only a settled indifference and a faint trace of mockery. He Jingxiao, look at you, you protect her, follow her, let her into your inner circle. Yet you're also frantically searching for me, offering a reward, publicly calling me your wife. What do you really want? Regret, resentment, or an inability to accept something that belonged to you slipping from your control? It's a pity, whether it's the wife, Cheng Yu, or the one who needs protecting, Qin Ru. They are merely symbols to fulfill some need of yours. The real Cheng Yu has already left with your son, and you know nothing about it, reborn from the ashes. In a place you cannot see, I closed the page, cleared the cache, and completely logged out of that account. Walking back to the bedside, Cheng Nuo was sleeping soundly, her little chest rising and falling evenly. I leaned down and gently kissed her forehead. "Sleep well, my treasure," I whispered. "No storm outside can touch us now, because I've built the strongest roof over our heads. As for that person frantically searching for a phantom in the storm, let him keep searching. The longer he searches, the deeper he sinks. When the truth is finally revealed, the backlash will be all the more profound." The hunter, no, now, I am the true strategist, watching the prey anxiously pacing at the edge of the trap. Time is the finest craftsman and the most merciless torrent. It has sculpted Cheng Nuo from a swaddled infant into a 3-year-old who can toddle into my studio, point at a design with her milky voice, and say, "Mommy, shiny." It has also honed Wish from a few pages of designs and scattered orders into an independent brand with a stable clientele and growing recognition in Europe's niche jewelry circle. 3 years have been enough for me to fully adapt to the lake-scented air of Zurich, to grow accustomed to using the name you in all situations, and to settle into the busy yet controlled rhythm woven from the dual identities of single mother and entrepreneur. It has also been enough for many past events to fade into distant, blurred background noise, but I have never truly forgotten that avalanche of white, nor He Jingxiao's resolute retreating back. They are the source of the resilience and icy undertone in all my designs. The flame of vengeance has not been extinguished, it has merely been encased in stillness, forged into a sharper, more lethal form. The opportunity finally arrived when I felt sufficiently prepared. The door was actively knocked on, and an invitation letter arrived from the organizers of the Shanghai International Jewelry Design Expo. This is one of the most influential industry events in the Asia-Pacific region. The invitation was politely worded, stating that the unique aesthetics and narrative displayed by the Wish brand and its designer Yu in the European market were impressive. They sincerely invited us to participate in the International Emerging Designers section of this expo. Should we go? Su Man held the invitation, her eyes sparkling with excitement but also carrying a hint of worry. This circle isn't too big, but it's not too small either. The He Families He Group is one of the permanent diamond sponsors of the expo, and He Jingxiao is likely to attend. Ju Yang sat nearby, her fingers lightly tapping the armrest of the sofa as she calmly analyzed the situation. Risks and opportunities coexist. The risk is that you might encounter him in public, while the opportunity is that this is the best springboard for you and wish to break into the domestic market and elevate your industry status. Given your current identity, your work, and your overseas background, as long as you handle it properly, it will be difficult for him to immediately equate you with the missing Mrs. He. After all, 3 years have passed, and you've changed a lot. I looked at the exquisite watermark pattern on the invitation. Yes, 3 years. I cut my long hair short and dyed it a more fashionable dark chestnut color. Years of regular living and persistent postpartum recovery have made my figure even more upright and slender than before pregnancy. More importantly, my demeanor and aura have changed. The meekness, forbearance, and waiting that belonged to Cheng Yu have long been replaced by Yu's confidence, cool elegance, and composure. Even I feel like a completely different person when I look at old photos. Moreover, I am Yu, a Chinese-American designer returning with my work. I have my son, Promise. But I have never publicly mentioned his father, creating the image of an independent single mother, which is not uncommon in the art world. Even if He Jingxiao has suspicions, he would need evidence. More importantly, why should I hide? The one who should feel guilty and flustered has never been me. Go. I raised my eyes, my voice clear and decisive. Not only will we participate, but we will also present our best work. Wish's second season theme was Rebirth, and the third season was Edge. This time, I'm preparing a special small series called Echo. Su Man was curious. Right, I walked over to the workbench, pulled out a few of the latest design drafts. They were no longer purely natural imagery but incorporated more abstract and impactful geometric cuts and asymmetrical structures. In terms of materials, I boldly experimented with the collision between the lightweight resilience of titanium and the sharp brilliance of colored diamonds. It was the clearer, firmer voice that echoed from the valley after the avalanche of ice and snow had settled and the dust had cleared. Ju Yang took the design drafts and looked them over, a flicker of appreciation in her eyes. Very powerful, strong visual impact, and it will generate a lot of buzz. It's needed. Should I arrange the reception and security in Shanghai in advance? And the promise to stay in Zurich, Mrs. Margaret, you, and I can all take good care of her. I've already thought it through. I'll go first with 2 assistants from the team. Man, if it's convenient for you, just come on the opening day to support me. Ju Yang, I'm afraid I'll really have to trouble you with the connections and logistics in Shanghai. His network in the country is equally unfathomable. No problem. Ju Yang nodded. I'll arrange for someone to assist you throughout, ensuring the safety and independence of your trip. As for He Jingxiao, I'll also keep an eye on his movements. The plan was thus set. For the next 2 months, I threw myself wholeheartedly into the creation of the Echo series. This time, I invested more effort and capital than ever before, collaborating with Italy's most microsetting workshop. I selected extremely high-quality rare-colored diamonds and specially treated titanium. Each piece was like a miniature, tension-filled modern sculpture, when the final piece, a necklace named Ice Radiance, inspired by shattered ice crystals and radiant beams, set with over 300 gradient grey-blue diamonds, was locked in a specially made safe. I knew I was ready. The plane landed at Shanghai Pudong International Airport, and the familiar yet unfamiliar air rushed to meet me. Wearing sunglasses and a sharply tailored beige trench coat, I was followed by 2 efficient European assistants pushing the specialized safe containing the exhibition pieces. The people arranged by Ju Yang were already waiting and efficiently transported us to the reserved hotel. Everything was low-key and orderly. On the opening day of the expo, the atmosphere was lively. The International Emerging Designer section wasn't in the most central location, but it was arranged with great style. I meticulously displayed the 5 pieces of the Echo series on a black velvet display stand, under the spotlights. The cold metal and dazzling diamonds refracted a breathtaking yet almost intimidating brilliance. The backdrop was a photo I personally selected, a tranquil, deep night sky over the Alps after a storm. Beside it was a brief but powerful introduction to the brand and the series. No personal story, only the design philosophy. I wore a simply lined black one-shoulder evening gown of my own design, paired with a pair of sharp earrings from the Echo series. With impeccable makeup and a composed demeanor, I stood by the booth, fluently alternating between English and Chinese to respond to the buyers, media, and peers who came to inquire. "Miss you, your design is truly stunning. The contrast between the coldness and brilliance is unforgettable," a domestic fashion magazine editor sincerely praised. "Thank you. I wanted to express the release of inner light after shattering," I replied with a smile, composed and graceful. "May I ask if your brand's inspiration has always been nature?" "Initially, yes, but the Echo series focuses more on the inner landscape, the changes in the terrain of the soul after experiencing certain extreme climates," I answered subtly and meaningfully. I could feel more and more eyes gathering on me, curious, admiring, probing, and then that intense feeling of being watched came from behind and to the side. It was as if invisible probes were trying to pierce through my back. I maintained the perfect angle of my profile while conversing with the visitor in front of me, but the corner of my eye had already caught sight of that group of people. He Jingxiao. He looked thinner than 3 years ago, his facial features were sharper, dressed in an expensive, well-fitted dark suit. Surrounded by several equally well-dressed executives and exhibition organizers, heading toward this exhibition area, his gaze was like that of a hawk, precisely locking onto me. His eyes were filled with unbelievable shock, scrutiny, and an extremely complex, turbulent urgency. Qin Ru was by his side too, dressed meticulously. She held onto his arm, but her face turned pale the moment she saw me clearly, her fingers unconsciously tightening around He Jingxiao's arm. He clearly recognized me too. Despite how much I had changed, my heart beat steadily in my chest, its rhythm completely undisturbed, and even the curve of my lips remained unchanged. What was bound to come had finally arrived. He Jingxiao's footsteps came to an abrupt halt just a few steps away from my booth. The people around him looked somewhat confused, following his gaze toward me. I happened to finish my conversation with the visitor in front of me, elegantly turning around. I faced the gaze that almost seemed to burn me. Our eyes met, and the air seemed to freeze at that moment, the surrounding noise fading into a blurry background. He Jingxiao's pupils contracted violently, His lips slightly parted as if he wanted to say something but couldn't make a sound. The muscles on his face were somewhat stiff from extreme shock. He stared intently at my face, as if trying to find even a trace of the old Cheng Yu. Qin Ru's fingers dug in even tighter, almost embedding themselves into the fabric of He Jingxiao's suit. I was the first to break the suffocating silence. The standard, appropriate smile for important guests spreading across my face, my eyes calm and unruffled, as if looking at a stranger I was meeting for the first time. I took the initiative to speak in clear and pleasant Chinese, my voice carrying across the just right distance. Director He, Miss Qin, welcome to the Wish booth. I am the brand manager and designer, Yu. This unfamiliar, crisp syllable was like a small ice pick, lightly but firmly tapping on He Jingxiao's tense nerves. He snapped back to reality, his Adam's apple bobbing violently. His voice carried a barely noticeable dryness and tremor, yet he tried hard to maintain composure. You are the designer of You Wish. Yes, I am. I nodded slightly, neither subservient nor arrogant. Thank you for the He Group's strong support for this exhibition. Please feel free to appreciate my works, the Echo series. I made an inviting gesture, meeting his gaze openly and honestly. He Jingxiao didn't look at the display booth. His eyes remained locked on my face, filled with shock and suspicion. There was also a surge of emotion that had been forcibly suppressed. Have we met somewhere before? He finally asked, his voice low but carrying a compelling pressure. I smiled lightly, though the smile didn't reach my eyes. Perhaps we crossed paths at some fashion event. My brand mainly operates overseas, and this is my first time returning to China for an exhibition. My reply was flawless, deftly deflecting his probing. Qin Ru finally found her voice, interjecting with a hint of sharpness and unconcealed panic. You designer looks really young. You already have your own brand. That's really impressive. I wonder if you're married yet. It must be tough working alone. His probing, in the most clumsy way. I turned to Qin Ru, my smile still perfect, but my eyes grow a degree colder. Thank you for your concern. I have a lovely son who is the source of all my inspiration. As for other matters, I pause, glancing meaningfully at her hand tightly clutching He Jingxiao's arm. I personally believe a woman's value in life doesn't necessarily have to be tied to marriage or a man. What do you think, Miss Qin? Qin Ru's face immediately flushes red and then pales, left speechless. He Jingxiao's expression darkens even more. A son. He has a son. This information explodes in his mind like a bomb. His gaze sharpens like a knife, sweeping over me again, as if trying to find any trace of pregnancy or childbirth on me, or perhaps trying to find any connection between that son and himself. The people around seemed to sense the unusual tension, starting to whisper and casting glances among the three of us. An organizer of the expo tries to smooth things over. Mr. He, designer Yu's work is truly unique and highly praised overseas. It's an honor for our expo to have him back in the country to exhibit, but He Jingxiao seems not to hear. He takes a step forward, closing the distance between us. That familiar, oppressive aura washes over me. But now his eyes hold something more chaotic than mere pressure. He stares intently into my eyes, his voice low enough for only us to hear, almost gritting his teeth as he asks, Cheng Yu, it's you, isn't it? Stop pretending. I meet his gaze without flinching, the corner of my mouth even curling into a deeper, faintly mocking smile. I reply in an equally low, clear voice, Mr. He, you've mistaken me for someone else. I am you. Then, my gaze sweeps past Qin Ru behind him and returns to his face. I add, word by word, softly yet with absolute clarity, I've heard a little about your wife. It's unfortunate, but please don't look for someone else's shadow in me. I don't like it. Having said that, I no longer look at his instantly transformed expression. I give a slight, polite, and distant bow. Apologies. There are guests over there I need to attend to. Excuse me. I turn, leaving He Jingxiao with a straight, resolute, and utterly unlingering back, and walk towards another newly arrived, influential French collector. Instantly switching to fluent French, my smile becomes sincere and warm. I can feel that gaze, like a red-hot branding iron, fixed firmly on my back, but this time, it's not me who is scorched, not me who is rooted to the spot. He Jingxiao, how does this fleeting glimpse feel? The prelude to the reunion has already begun. The real show is yet to come. The confrontation on the first day of the exhibition was like a stone thrown into a calm lake, and the ripples it stirred spread faster and wider than I had imagined. The foot traffic at the Wish booth noticeably increased, with many industry insiders casting curious and probing glances, whispering among themselves, their eyes subtly shifting between me and He Jingxiao, who occasionally appeared in the VIP area of the exhibition hall. Gossip is the best seasoning for such occasions, and the brief yet tense standoff between He Jingxiao and me had clearly become one of the hottest topics backstage at the expo. "Have you heard, mister? He seemed to have mistaken that overseas returned designer Yu for his missing wife." "Really? But upon closer look, designer Yu's aura does share an indescribable resemblance to the photos of Mr. He looked terrifying at the time, but designer Yu was super calm, completely treating him like a stranger." His secretary, Qin, looked furious. To all these discussions, I responded with a professional smile, focusing on introducing my work. No explanations, no responses. The more mysterious, the more curiosity it sparks, and the attention on Wish only grew. This was an unexpected gain. He Jingxiao didn't personally visit my booth again, but I knew his people were nearby. The feeling of being watched lingered faintly. The people arranged by Zhu Yang informed me that He Jingxiao's assistant was quietly investigating Yu's background, especially your whereabouts and family situation over the past 3 years. Fortunately, Zhu Yang's prior arrangements were flawless. Yu's resume was clean and impressive. From the fictional European art school education to founding Wish and living in Zurich with the child, all timelines were logical and could withstand scrutiny. I originally didn't plan to attend the networking cocktail party after the first day of the exhibition, but Su Man rushed to Shanghai in a whirlwind. As soon as she landed, she headed straight to the hotel and insisted on dragging me along. "Why not go? It's not like we've done anything wrong," Su Man said indignantly while helping me pick out a dress. "Let those gossipers see that our designer is poised and confident, holding her own in social settings. Besides, Zhu Yang will be there too, with us around. What could He Jingxiao possibly do?" Unable to resist her and thinking it might be an opportunity to meet some truly valuable partners, I finally agreed. I chose a sleek silver-gray knee-length dress with strong design elements, its clean lines perfectly accentuating my demeanor. I still wore the Echo series earrings. Su Man, in a striking red dress, linked arms with me, radiating confidence. The cocktail party was held in the luxurious banquet hall on the top floor of the exhibition center, with crystal chandeliers glittering and elegantly dressed guests mingling. When Su Man, Zhu Yang, and I made our entrance, we attracted quite a few glances. Zhu Yang seemed quite familiar in domestic circles. He was frequently approached by people for small talk, handling it with ease and naturally drawing me into the conversations. I spoke with grace and offered unique insights into jewelry design and the European market, quickly shifting the focus of those who had initially been there for gossip to serious discussions about potential collaborations. He Jingxiao and Qin Ru naturally attended as well. He wore a tuxedo, his expression cold and stern, his gaze locking onto me like a tangible force across the crowd. Qin Ru clung closely to him, dressed in a soft pink gown that couldn't hide the tension and a hint of resentment on her face. He Jingxiao seemed to be entertaining several important partners but was distracted, his eyes frequently drifting toward me. I deliberately ignored his gaze, focusing on my conversation with a purchasing director from a high-end French department store. Su Man, meanwhile, was like a protective mother hen, occasionally glaring back at him. The party was in full swing, the atmosphere lively. I was quietly discussing some technical cooperation details with Zhu Yang when I suddenly felt something soft bump against my calf. Looking down, I saw a little boy, about 3 or 4 years old, dressed in a delicate little suit, who had run too fast and bumped into my leg. The cream cake he was holding almost smeared all over his face. The little one looked up, his big, black grape-like eyes innocent and confused. His lips quivered as if he was about to cry. "Cheng Nuo, how did he get here?" I froze for a moment. I had clearly arranged for him to stay in Zurich under the care of Mrs. Margaret. Immediately after, I saw Mrs. Margaret running anxiously from the direction of the side door, apologizing repeatedly in German. "I'm sorry, Ms. Nuo woke up and didn't see you." He kept fussing, And just then, Su Man's assistant was going to the airport to pick someone up and said they could bring us over to surprise you. I couldn't hold him back in time. A surprise. This was more like a shock, but there was no time to blame anyone now. I immediately crouched down, not caring about my dress, took out a handkerchief, and gently wiped the cream from the corner of Cheng Nuo's mouth. Softly, I asked, Nuo, did it hurt? Seeing me, Cheng Nuo immediately forgot his grievances, opened his little arms, and threw himself into my embrace, calling out in a sweet, childish voice, Mommy, Nuo missed Mommy, found Mommy. This clear cry of Mommy sounded especially crisp and loud in our relatively quiet little circle. The surroundings fell silent for a few seconds. I could feel countless gazes, especially the sharpest, most intense one, suddenly focusing on Cheng Nuo and me, pinning us in place. He Jingxiao had somehow broken away from the people around him and was striding over. His face, under the dazzling crystal chandelier, looked alarmingly pale. His eyes were fixed on Cheng Nuo's face. Then suddenly turned to me, his pupils churning with turbulent emotions, shock, suspicion, anger, and a trace of near-panic urgency that even he might not have been aware of. Qinru followed behind him, her face even paler than He Jingxiao's, her gaze at Cheng Nuo filled with disbelief, panic, and jealousy. Zhu Yang subtly stepped forward half a step, positioning herself slightly in front of me, while Su Man immediately came over, linking her arm with mine to offer support. He Jingxiao had already walked up to us. His breathing was somewhat heavy, his eyes scanning back and forth between me and Cheng Nuo. Finally, his gaze settled on Cheng Nuo's little face, which resembled mine but strangely blended with another familiar set of features. A child's face is the most honest mirror. The shape of Cheng Nuo's eyebrows, the curve of his nose bridge, even the way he slightly pursed his lips, were almost a miniature version of He Jingxiao. Especially those eyes, though now round and full of childish innocence, their shape was identical to He Jingxiao's. He Jingxiao seemed as if struck by lightning, his entire body frozen in place. He stared intently at Cheng Nuo, his fingers unconsciously curling, the veins on the back of his hands faintly visible. Cheng Nuo, frightened by this suddenly approaching, scary-looking stranger, shrank back into my embrace, his little hands tightly clutching my clothes. He Jingxiao's Adam's apple bobbed violently a few times. He suddenly crouched down, his gaze level with Cheng Nuo. This man, who dominated the business world and always stood high above, was now squatting in front of a child, trying to soften his expression. Yet, his voice carried an uncontrollable tension and hoarseness. Little one, what's your name? Cheng Nuo looked at him timidly, then glanced up at me. I held her tighter, gently patting her back to reassure her not to be afraid. Cheng Nuo whispered in response, My name is Cheng Nuo, Cheng Nuo. He Jingxiao repeated the name, his eyes growing even darker. The surname Cheng. He abruptly looked up at me, his voice suppressing a storm of emotions. His surname is Cheng. I met his gaze calmly, my tone indifferent. Yes, my son naturally takes my surname. Your son, He Jingxiao, practically spat out those 3 words through gritted teeth. His gaze fell back on Cheng Nuo's face, the resemblance impossible to ignore. His voice dropped even lower, carrying an almost obsessive urgency. How old is he? 3, I answered without hesitation. 3 years old. As the timeline clicked into place, He Jingxiao's face instantly darkened. That was right around the time Cheng Yu disappeared. He suddenly reached out, as if to touch Cheng Nuo's face or grasp something for confirmation. But Cheng Nuo shrank back in fear, burying his face in the crook of my neck. My hand was quicker, gently but firmly blocking He Jingxiao's outstretched arm. The movement was subtle but carried an unmistakable refusal. Mr. He, my voice turned cold, laced with clear distance and displeasure. Please show some restraint, you're scaring my son. He Jingxiao's hand froze mid-air. He stared at me, eyes bloodshot, his voice hissing through clenched teeth. Cheng Yu, how much longer are you going to keep pretending? Is this child He Jingxiao? I raised my voice, cutting off the accusation he was about to blurt out. Many people around had already noticed the unusual situation on our side and were quietly watching. I picked up Cheng Nuo and stood up, looking down at He Jingxiao, who was still crouched on the ground, and spoke clearly and coldly. Word by word, I'll say it one last time. I am you, not the Cheng Yu you mentioned. Cheng Nuo is my son alone. Who his father is has nothing to do with you or anyone else here. Please do not disturb our lives as mother and son again." My words were like a basin of ice water poured over He Jingxiao's head. He slowly stood up, his figure seeming to sway slightly, his face ashen, but his eyes grew sharper and more frenzied, like a trapped beast that becomes even fiercer after being wounded. Qin Ru finally seized the opportunity to interject, her voice sharp and tinged with a desperate urgency to cover up the truth. "Jingxiao, calm down. This child might just resemble someone else. There are plenty of people in the world who look alike. The designer said it wasn't you. So don't let your imagination run wild." When Cheng Yu left back then, there was no news of her being pregnant. She deliberately brought up the lack of news about the pregnancy. Trying to muddy the waters, He Jingxiao suddenly turned his head and glared fiercely at Qin Ru, the ferocity in his eyes instantly silencing her and leaving her face deathly pale. He turned his gaze back to me, lingering on my calm expression and the small hand that clung to my neck with affection. Finally, his eyes settled on Cheng Nuo's little face, which bore such a striking resemblance to his own. Once the seed of doubt is sown, especially in the face of such obvious evidence, it grows wildly. He didn't say anything more, but his eyes said it all. He wouldn't let it go. I stopped looking at him, turning to Zhu Yang and Su Man. My tone returned to calm. "Sorry, the child is a bit frightened. I'll take him back to the room to rest slowly. Zhu Yang, I'll leave things here to you. Don't worry. I'll handle it." Su Man immediately spoke up, and Zhu Yang nodded slightly, her gaze sweeping over He Jingxiao with a faint warning, holding Cheng Nuo. I turned and left the banquet hall accompanied by Mrs. Margaret, my back straight and my step steady. Behind me, that gaze followed like a shadow, burning and stubborn, carrying a madness that was about to break through everything. I knew that this meeting between parent and child had already hooked He Jingxiao's heart like the sharpest hook. If he didn't acknowledge it, doubt would gnaw at him. If he did, how would he reconcile the avalanche and betrayal from 3 years ago? Cheng Nuo lay on my shoulder and whispered, "Mom, that uncle is so scary. Is he a bad person?" I kissed her little cheek and said softly, "He's not a bad person, just a poor soul who mistook someone else. Don't be afraid, Nuo, Mom is here. Yes, Mom is here. Mom will protect you and make sure those who deserve to pay the price do so." The taste of He Jingxiao's suspicion, the torment of meeting his child without recognizing them, this is only the beginning. After the night of the reception, I immediately moved with Cheng Nuo and Mrs. Margaret to a more secluded private apartment under Zhu Yang's name. Although Cheng Nuo was a bit frightened, children forget quickly, and she was soon captivated by the novelty of the new environment. However, when sleeping at night, her little hand would tightly clutch the corner of my pajamas. As expected, He Jingxiao didn't give up. His people, like shadows, tried to infiltrate our temporary circle. When we checked out of the hotel, his informant happened to be at the front desk. When we drove away, a tail followed not too far behind, and even unfamiliar Chinese customers appeared at the supermarket near my new apartment, their eyes inadvertently sweeping over Cheng Nuo in the stroller I was pushing. The people arranged by Zhu Yang had excellent counter-surveillance skills, skillfully diffusing or diverting the situation each time, but the sticky feeling of being watched by a venomous snake lingered. He was sparing no effort to obtain Cheng Nuo's DNA sample. Zhu Yang told me over encrypted communication, her voice as calm as ever. "At your previous residence, he managed to get hold of Cheng Nuo's fallen hair. At your new apartment, he tried to bribe the property cleaners, but our people intercepted it. However, given his obsession and resources, obtaining a sample is only a matter of time." Stroking Cheng Nuo's soft hair as she slept, my heart turned cold. Wasn't this expected? When He Jingxiao saw Cheng Nuo's face with his own eyes, the seed of doubt had already grown into a towering tree. Without a definitive answer, he would never give up. "Let him take it," I said to Zhu Yang, my voice devoid of panic. "If he wants the truth, I'll give him the truth. I just hope he can swallow the taste of it." "Do you need me to do anything?" Zhu Yang asked, for example, giving him a surprising paternity report. "No," I refused, "it has to be real. Only the real one is the most lethal. A fake might mislead temporarily, but once exposed, it would only weaken my legitimacy. I want to nail his remorse, his guilt, and all his self-righteousness over the past 3 years to the pillar of shame with irrefutable facts." I know He Jingxiao sought the most top-tier and reliable private paternity testing agency in the country to get the results as quickly as possible. I can even imagine how restless he was while anxiously waiting. How he replayed the scene on the snowy mountain over and over again, how he calculated the age of the promise, and how he was repeatedly tormented by the what-if assumptions. This process itself is a form of punishment. Meanwhile, I continued attending the last 2 days of the expo with Chung Nuo, acting as if nothing had happened. The Wish booth remained highly popular, with orders and cooperation intentions far exceeding expectations. I still calmly handled visitors and media as you. Though security around me was noticeably tightened, Chung Nuo did not appear in public either. Qin Ru, on the other hand, quieted down for 2 days, likely frightened by the look in He Jingxiao's eyes that night or anxiously awaiting the paternity results herself. But she clearly hadn't given up. On the afternoon before the expo's closing day, as I was about to leave the venue, she cornered me at the relatively secluded VIP passage entrance. She probably deliberately chose a time when no one else was around. Her makeup was impeccable, but it couldn't hide the exhaustion and venom in her eyes. You, designer, are quite the schemer. Qinru got straight to the point, her voice low but sharp like a poisoned needle. Finding a child who somewhat resembles President He to put on this act, are you trying to catch his attention and seize some benefits? Or do you think using a child can salvage something? I stopped and looked at her calmly, as if watching a boring farce. Miss Qin, I don't understand what you're talking about. Stop pretending. Qin Ru's emotions seemed to spiral as she took a step closer. You're Chengyu, you've had plastic surgery, changed your identity, and brought a bastard back just to get revenge on Jingxiao and return to the He family. Right, let me tell you, dream on. Jingxiao loves me now. During the avalanche back then, it was me he protected, not you. The word bastard burned like a red-hot iron, instantly freezing the look in my eyes. Staring at her face, twisted with jealousy and fear, I suddenly found it utterly laughable. This was the person He Jingxiao chose at a life-or-death moment, someone who only knew how to attack women and children with the most vicious words, a bully who's all bark and no bite, a fool. Qin Ru, I called her name directly for the first time, my voice as cold as a Siberian gale. Back during the avalanche, he protected you, treating you like an object in need of protection. But in these 3 years, has he married you? Has he publicly acknowledged you? Have you ever stepped through the doors of the He family? Qin Ru's face turned pale. I continued in that calm, almost cruel tone. Right now, he's searching the world for me. He's offering a huge reward to confirm whether I was pregnant. He's going mad trying to prove whether my son is his child. I leaned in slightly, close to her ear, and spoke in a voice only we could hear, word by word. And you're just a secretary he could use to block the snow when needed and discard whenever he doesn't. Know your place. Don't overestimate yourself. Qin Wei was as if struck by lightning, staggering back a step, her lips trembling, yet unable to utter a single word. Her eyes were filled with humiliation and panic. I no longer looked at her, turned, and walked away. The sound of high heels striking the ground was crisp and rhythmic, echoing in the empty corridor. Spending even one more word on such a person was a waste of my time. Her fate had long been sealed. The real storm arrived on the eve of the exhibition's complete closure. Just as I was preparing to return to Zurich, late at night, the apartment doorbell was pressed in an almost frenzied manner. Mrs. Margaret stared in horror at the surveillance screen. Standing outside was He Jingxiao, his eyes bloodshot, hair disheveled, looking as if he had aged 10 years overnight. He had brought no one with him, only himself, like a cornered beast. The people arranged by Zhu Yang stopped him. But He Jingxiao paid no heed, shouting hoarsely toward the door. Chengyu, open the door. I know you're inside, open the door. His voice was filled with despair and fury on the verge of collapse. Cheng Nuo was awakened by the noise, crying in a daze. I held him in my arms to soothe him, signaling Mrs. Margaret to take him into the inner bedroom. Then I walked to the door, peering through the peephole at the nearly crazed man outside. I knew he had received the results. I took a deep breath and opened the door. But only the inner wooden door, the outer security iron door still stood between us. It's not your style to disturb the peace late at night, Mr. He, I said coldly. Watching him through the iron bars, He Jingxiao lunged at the iron door, his hands gripping the bars tightly. his knuckles turning white, his eyes were bloodshot, fixed intently on me. The paternity test report was clenched tightly in his other hand, the pages crumpled into a ball. "Cheng Nuo is my son," he began, his voice so hoarse it was barely recognizable. Each word seemed forced from his throat, carrying a bloody tone. "The report, it shows a probability of paternity greater than 99%. 99%, he raised the crumpled paper, his hand trembling violently. 3 years and 2 months, the timing matches perfectly. You were all ready. When you left," he couldn't continue, overwhelmed by immense pain and regret, like a tsunami crashing over him, leaving him almost unable to stand. He pressed his forehead against the cold iron bars, his shoulders shaking uncontrollably. "So what?" I asked calmly, as if discussing someone else's affairs. He Jingxiao abruptly raised his head, his bloodshot eyes brimming with tears, anger, pain, disbelief. "So what, Cheng Yu? That's my son, my flesh and blood. You carried him. You left with him for 3 years. You made me miss 3 years of his growth. You made me search the world like a fool for a dead person, while my son was alive somewhere I didn't know. How could you be so heartless? Heartless." I seemed to have heard the biggest joke in the world, a cold curve lifting at the corner of my mouth. "He Jingxiao. You talked to me about heartlessness. When the avalanche came, you protected Qin Ru, leaving me and the child in my belly to die in the snow. Why didn't you think you were heartless then?" He Jingxiao trembled violently, his face as pale as paper. At that time, he tried to explain, but found any words pale and powerless in the face of that bloody fact. "Your instinctive choice at that moment was your true heart." I interrupted him, my voice not loud but each word sharp as a knife. "In your heart. Qin Ru's life was more worthy of protection than mine, Cheng Yu's, and the life of your own flesh and blood in my belly. At that moment, you personally killed the identities of husband and father. Now, what right do you have to question me? I was wrong, Cheng Yu. I know I was wrong." He Jingxiao's emotions completely collapsed. He pounded on the iron door with force, making dull thuds, and tears finally fell like rain, mixed with endless regret. "These 3 years. I haven't had a single good day. I regret it every day. I searched for you until I almost went mad. I truly didn't know you were pregnant. If I had known you were pregnant, I might have chosen you then." I finished for him, but my gaze grew even colder. He Jingxiao, don't deceive yourself. Your choice had nothing to do with whether you knew I was pregnant. It only concerned who was the most important person in your heart. The one you most wanted to protect in a life or death moment. Unfortunately, it wasn't me. He opened his mouth like a fish out of water, unable to make any sound. My words completely shattered his last bit of self-comforting illusion. "Cheng Nuo is my son, only my son, Cheng Yu's son." I looked at his broken state, feeling not a ripple in my heart, only a frozen wasteland. On his birth certificate, the father's column is blank, his surname follows mine. In his world, the concept of a father never existed, and it never will in the future. No, it can't be. He Jingxiao shook his head violently, tears and mucus streaming down his face, with not a trace of the authority of the He Corporation's CEO left. "He is my son. I have the right. Cheng Yu, I beg you, let me see him. Let me make it up to you both. Let's start over. I'll break it off with Qin Ru immediately. I'll agree to anything you say. Let's start over." It was as if I had heard the most absurd joke. He Jingxiao, can an avalanche on a mountain be refilled? Can a dead heart start beating again? The image of you protecting Qin Ru is something I will never forget for the rest of my life. Every moment, she reminds me of what an unreliable husband you were. What an unworthy father. I paused, watching his expression shift from despair to desolation, and slowly delivered the final, most brutal truth. "By the way, there's something you might not know, or perhaps Qin Ru didn't dare to tell you." He Jingxiao lifted his tear-streaked face, looking at me in confusion. "Before I left, I had planned to tell you about my pregnancy during that mountain trip." My voice was as light as a feather, yet it fell on his heart with the weight of 1,000 pounds. I had even taken a photo of the positive pregnancy test, saved it on my phone, wanting to give you a surprise. He Jingxiao's pupils dilated suddenly, as if all strength had been drained from his body. He slid down along the iron gate and collapsed onto the floor, staring at me with wide, unblinking eyes. His mouth opened and closed soundlessly. The immense shock had left him unable to even cry, so, at the moment he chose to protect Qin-ru. He had also abandoned the first announcement of his own unborn child's life, a truth he never knew. This belated truth was sharper than any blade, grinding the last remnants of his self-deception and false hope into dust. I watched him slumped on the cold floor of the corridor outside the door, looking like a beggar who had lost everything. There was no sense of vengeful satisfaction in my heart, only an icy calm. He Jingxiao, how does the truth taste? This is a fresh regret. Worthy of the choice you made back then. I gave him one last cold glance, then closed the inner wooden door, shutting him out of my world along with his 3 years too late, worthless tears, and remorse. Inside, a small, sleepy voice came from the bedroom. "Mommy, is there a bad person outside?" I walked over, picked her up, and kissed her forehead. "No bad people, sweetheart," I said softly. "Just a stranger who doesn't matter anymore. Go back to sleep, it's almost dawn." Yes. It was almost dawn, my dawn had long since broken. But He Jingxiao's night was just beginning. His breakdown that night was like a violent but short-lived thunderstorm. After the thunder ceased, it left behind a mess and an even more suffocating low pressure. He didn't come back to bang on the door, but I knew he would never simply let go. A paranoid man who had just learned he had a biological son but was shut out, especially one accustomed to controlling everything. What he might do next was unpredictable. Zhu Yang had strengthened the security around the apartment, making it almost impenetrable. He advised me to return to Zurich with Chung Nuo as soon as possible, staying away from this troubled place. I had the same thought. The goals for the domestic exhibition had been exceeded, Wish had gained great fame, and orders were pouring in continuously. It was time to retire after achieving success. However, some people were always unwilling to bow out just like that. On the morning before we were scheduled to depart for Zurich, the doorbell rang again. This time, it wasn't the frantic, urgent ringing but a regular, even somewhat pleasant, short sound. "Mrs. Margaret" glanced through the surveillance and turned back to me in surprise, saying, "MS, you, it's that MS, Qin, she's alone." Qin-ru, what was she here for? To cry and plead for he and Jingxiao, or to continue her self-proclaimed drama of forcing a confrontation? I asked Mrs. Margaret to take Chung Nuo to the inner room to play. While I walked to the door, I didn't open the door but simply connected to the intercom of the video doorbell. On the screen, Qin-ru looked even more haggard than the last time she confronted me in the hallway. Her eyes were red and swollen, she wore no makeup. And she was dressed in an inconspicuous grey tracksuit, clutching a small handbag tightly. She looked at the camera, forcing a pitiful smile, her voice deliberately soft and choked. "Designer you, no, Sister Cheng you. I know it's you. Please, could you open the door? I just want to say a few words, and I'll leave right after." I'm here to apologize. Really, to apologize. I raised an eyebrow, a weasel paying respects to a chicken. There was nothing to discuss between us, MS, Qin. I responded coldly. "Please leave, Sister Cheng Yu, please." Qin-ru's tears came as soon as she spoke, falling in torrents, as if she deeply regretted her past actions. "I know I was wrong. I was young and foolish before, did many things that hurt you, said many awful things, especially that day at the exhibition. I shouldn't have said those things about Nuo Nuo. I deserve to be slapped. I really know I was wrong." As she spoke, she even lightly slapped her own cheeks twice. Her acting was exaggerated. President He Jingxiao, he's completely fallen apart now. He doesn't even care about the company anymore, drinks every day, muttering about you and the child. "I know it's all because of me, because of what happened back then on the snow mountain." She cried even more heart-wrenchingly. "Sister Cheng Yu, you're magnanimous. Please forgive Jingxiao. He really didn't mean it. He knows he was wrong now, regrets it deeply. Nuo Nuo can't be without a father. For the sake of the child, give him a chance, and give me a chance to atone. Okay, I promise I'll disappear immediately, never appear before you again." Her words were sincere and heartfelt, painting herself as a lost soul who had found her way back, a devoted woman willing to sacrifice everything, while portraying He Jingxiao as a deeply affectionate husband who had truly reformed. She placed me on the moral high ground of forgiveness for the sake of the child, but unfortunately, I didn't believe a single word. "Are you finished?" My voice was utterly calm. "If you're done, please leave. My family affairs are none of your concern." Ru's sobbing abruptly stopped, and a flicker of unconcealed astonishment and anger crossed her face. She probably hadn't expected me to be so unyielding. She bit her lip and suddenly shifted her tone, carrying a hint of barely noticeable urgency and temptation. Sister Chengyu, please don't rush to refuse. I didn't just come to apologize today. I also brought some things about Jingxiao, about the He family, that you might not know. It might be helpful for you, for Nwonuo's future. She patted the handbag she was holding. Can I come in to talk? It's not convenient here. This could help with my and Nwonuo's future. I sneered inwardly. It was nothing more than some leverage against He Jingxiao or internal secrets of the He family. Trying to use them as bargaining chips to secure her own escape or gain benefits, or perhaps even more maliciously, she wanted to extract more information from me and Cheng Nworuo, or set some kind of trap. Just as I was about to refuse again, the corner of my eye caught a glimpse of the surveillance screen. On the garden path below the apartment building, a man dressed as a courier was pushing an empty delivery cart, seemingly strolling casually. But his gaze kept drifting toward the entrance of our building. His build and posture were strikingly similar to one of the watchers who had appeared near the supermarket a few days earlier. Was he sent by He Jingxiao, or had Ru brought him, or perhaps both? A thought flashed through my mind like lightning. Was Ru's visit today truly just her personal repentance and transaction? Could it be that He Jingxiao had instructed her, or were both of them testing the waters with their own hidden agendas? I changed my mind. All right, I said into the intercom, my voice softening slightly, as if moved by her words. You can come in, but I'll only give you 10 minutes. Ru's face immediately lit up with relief and delight. Thank you, Sister Chengyu, thank you. I unlocked the security door and let her in, but only allowed her to stand in the entryway, not inviting her into the living room. I myself remained standing not far from the door, maintaining a safe distance and staying alert. Ru quickly scanned the interior decor after entering, her gaze lingering for a moment on the closed bedroom door before turning to me. With an ingratiating smile, she placed her handbag on the entryway cabinet and made a move to open it. Sister Chengyu, the things are in here, some documents. And just as she lowered her head to unzip the handbag, a sudden change occurred. Instead of pulling out any documents, she swiftly retrieved a small canister resembling a spray bottle from the bag and aimed it at my face, ready to press the nozzle. At the same time, her other hand shot toward a decorative vase on the entryway cabinet, as if trying to create a bigger commotion. Was it knockout drugs, pepper spray, or something else? I was prepared. The moment I noticed the shift in her eyes and the tension in her shoulders, I didn't retreat. Instead, I quickly sidestepped and ducked, while my right foot shot out to kick her sharply in the shin. Ah! Ru cried out in pain, her movements faltering. Most of the white mist from the spray canister dispersed into the air and onto the nearby wall, with only a tiny amount landing on my sleeve. At the same time, my arm deflected her hand as she reached for the vase. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. Almost simultaneously, the door to Li Jian's bedroom was flung open, not by Mrs. Margaret, but by Ju Yang. Two plainclothes security personnel, whose movements were exceptionally swift, rushed out. It turned out they had been hiding inside all along. Meanwhile, the apartment's main door was opened from the outside, and two more security personnel quickly entered, locking it behind them. Ru was completely stunned. The fragile situation she had anticipated, just me and an elderly nanny, had instantly transformed into her being surrounded by four well-trained, burly men. What are you doing? Ru's face turned deathly pale as she retreated in terror, her back pressed against the wall. The spray canister clattered to the floor. I ignored her and quickly moved to a safe area. One security officer immediately handed me a damp towel to wipe my sleeve, while another had already picked up the spray canister and was examining it carefully. It's a high-potency hallucinogenic anesthetic spray. The dosage is enough to render an adult unconscious in a short time. What a vicious plan. She intended to knock me out, and then what? Kidnap Chengnuo, or inflict more direct harm on me. I coldly looked at Ru, whose face had lost all color. Miss Qin, is this your way of apologizing and helping? Breaking into a private residence with contraband, intending to cause harm? No, you've misunderstood, Ru stammered, waving her hands frantically. That's pepper spray. I brought it for self-defense. I wanted to talk to you properly. You attacked first. It's pepper spray, a security officer sneered, pointing to the foreign language label on the canister. Shall I translate the usage instructions and ingredients for you, or we can just call the police and let them verify it? At the mention of the police, Chin-Ru panicked completely, her legs gave way, and she nearly collapsed to the floor. No, don't call the police, Sister Chengyu. I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. It was He Jingxiao. He forced me to come. He said if I could bring you out, or just bring Chengyu out for him to see, he'd give me a sum of money and send me abroad. It was all his doing. She was trying to drag He Jingxiao into it again. It was hard to say how much of this was true, but the spectacle of a dog-eat-dog fight was always entertaining. Was the recording captured? I asked the security officer beside me. From the moment she entered, high-definition video and audio have been synchronously recorded, including the entire process of her using the contraband, the officer confirmed. I nodded and walked over to Chin-Ru, who was slumped on the floor, looking down at her. Chin-Ru, I gave you a chance, that time in the corridor. I warned you not to overestimate yourself. Unfortunately, you didn't listen. You think you're still the weakling He Jingxiao could protect in his arms 3 years ago. Wake up. To him now, you're just a nuisance. A mark of shame reminding him of the huge mistake he made back then. He might use you, but he will never protect you again. Chin-Ru trembled all over, looking up at me with eyes full of fear and resentment. You set a trap for me from the start. A trap, I chuckled lightly. You came here with malicious intent on your own. I merely took the most basic steps to protect myself. I simply stood up and said to the security personnel, call the police, possession of prohibited drugs, intent to incapacitate others, attempted kidnapping or intentional harm, breaking and entering, the evidence is solid. Inform the police that this MS, Chin may also be involved in other financial issues, such as suspected theft of He Group's trade secrets or embezzlement of funds by taking advantage of her position. I looked at Chin-Ru, who had already turned pale. I thought both the police and He Group's lawyers would be very interested in investigating further. These speculations were not unfounded. Zhu Yang had long looked into Chin-Ru's background. During her years by He Jingxiao's side, she hadn't been clean, but He Jingxiao had either been too lazy to dig deeper or had been deceived by her. Now was the perfect time to settle all accounts. The security personnel immediately dialed the police. Chin-Ru completely broke down. She tried to rush over and beg for mercy but was firmly restrained by the security personnel. She cried and shouted, Chengyu, you can't do this to me. Jingxiao won't let you get away with this. The He family won't let you get away with this. He Jingxiao. I walked to the window, lifted a corner of the blinds, and looked down at the lookout disguised as a courier. Upon noticing the presence of multiple security personnel and the police being called, his face had already turned pale, and he was frantically making a phone call. Then he quickly slipped away. He was in no position to save himself. Soon, the sound of sirens grew closer, and the police arrived. We provided complete surveillance footage and evidence. As Chin-Ru was handcuffed and taken away, she was still screaming curses. But more than that, she was crying in despair. The police stated they would conduct a thorough investigation and advised me to be cautious about my safety in the near future. Promising to increase patrols in the area, the fast temporarily came to an end, and Zhu Yang quickly arrived to handle the follow-up matters. After hearing the details, he furrowed his brows slightly. He Jingxiao shouldn't be foolish enough to directly instruct him to do something like this. It's more likely his own desperate act, or perhaps the two of them reached some dangerous understanding. But it's just as well he's been taken in, one less fly to deal with. He Jingxiao's side will probably become even more frantic. Let him go crazy, I said calmly. With Chin-Ru locked up and no outlet for her frustration, she'll only suffer more, and Chin-Ru, in an effort to reduce her sentence, will desperately reveal everything she knows, including things about He Jingxiao and the He family. That'll be enough to give him a hard time. This move was somewhat risky, but the effect was significant. Not only did it resolve the potential threat posed by Chin-Ru, but it also further disrupted He Jingxiao's plans and might even bring new trouble to the He group. I walked into the inner room. Cheng Nuo was being held by Mrs. Margaret, blinking his big eyes as if disturbed by the commotion outside, but he didn't seem afraid. When he saw me, he stretched out his little hands and said, Mommy, hold me. I took him and held him tightly in my arms. "Mommy, were there bad people?" Cheng Nuo whispered. "The bad people were taken away by the police officers." I kissed his forehead. "Nuo Nuo isn't afraid. Nuo Nuo isn't afraid. Nuo Nuo protects Mommy," the little one said, waving his small fist with a serious expression. I smiled, feeling a deep sense of tenderness and determination in my heart. "Yes, Mommy will protect you too." Clearing away all the thorns and venomous snakes on the path in my own way, Qin Ru was merely the first to collide head-on. "He Jingxiao, you're next. Our flight is tomorrow, and tonight is destined to be sleepless for many. But Cheng Nuo and I will sleep soundly because the scales of victory are irreversibly tipping in our favor." Qin Ru being taken away by the police was like a block of ice thrown into a boiling oil pot, instantly igniting more intense reactions and thicker smoke. He truly was no easy opponent. In order to protect himself and reduce his sentence, he began frantically implicating others in the interrogation room. Not only did he admit to his attempt to take Cheng Nuo away under He Jingxiao's implied instigation and the Qin family's instructions, though the evidence was insufficient, but he also revealed many of He Jingxiao's business operations that treaded in gray areas, as well as some unsavory old accounts within the He group. Although much of it was based on hearsay or his one-sided claims, it was enough to cause the He group's stock price to suffer consecutive setbacks in the following days. Further exacerbating He Jingxiao's already precarious situation, I didn't stay in the country to watch the spectacle. Early the morning after Qin Ru was taken away, I took Cheng Nuo and, under the meticulous arrangements of Ju Yang and Su Man, quietly boarded a flight back to Zurich. The plane soared into the sky, leaving the noise, chaos, and lingering smoke of Shanghai far below, returning to the tranquil home at the foot of the Alps. It felt like retreating from a bizarre battlefield to a safe fortress. Cheng Nuo quickly returned to his daily routine of chasing butterflies in the garden and building blocks on the playmat, as if the brief journey to the east was just a somewhat noisy dream. My life also swiftly returned to normal, handling accumulated work emails, communicating with the workshop about new order details, and brainstorming the next season's theme for Wish. Qin Ru's fate and He Jingxiao's troubles became nothing more than occasional headlines on distant news websites. No longer able to stir even the slightest ripple in my heart, it wasn't until a week later that a video call from lawyer Qiao Wei brought new developments. He Jingxiao has agreed to sign. Qiao Wei's voice carried a hint of fatigue but more so a sense of relief. However, he has one condition. I was watching Cheng Nuo clumsily drawing with crayons as I replied calmly. "He wants to meet you in Shanghai one more time to sign in person. He says there are things that must be said face to face, and they concern Cheng Nuo's custody and visitation rights. He demands these be included in the agreement for discussion," Qiao Wei added. His lawyer hinted that if this meeting doesn't happen, he might delay indefinitely or even leverage certain biases in domestic law favoring fathers to file a custody lawsuit. Although, given your current situation and the evidence, his chances of winning are slim, it would be very troublesome, time-consuming, and could cause unnecessary exposure and distress for Cheng Nuo. I fell silent for a moment. He Jingxiao, backed into a corner, was trying to force me to appear using his last bargaining chip, a custody lawsuit. Did he think I was still the Cheng Yu from 3 years ago, easily manipulated by him? "Tell him I'll meet him. But I'll decide the time and place," I said coldly, "only him and me. With both lawyers present, no unrelated personnel, no media. If I detect any tricks, the meeting is cancelled immediately. As for the custody lawsuit, I'll fight it to the end, and I'll immediately release all the evidence to the media, including the truth about the avalanche, the despicable things he allowed Qin Ru to do, and his glorious achievements over the years. Let him weigh the consequences carefully." Qiao Wei gasped. "You still have evidence about the avalanche?" "The sports camera I carried back then had automatic cloud backups," I said flatly. "It was originally meant to document the trip. It recorded the entire avalanche incident, including him shielding Qin Ru and me rolling alone toward the rocks. Although the footage is shaky, the key moments are clear. I've kept it as my final trump card." "Understood. I'll convey this right away." Qiao Wei's voice now filled with confidence. 3 days later, in Shanghai. The location was set at a private club under Ju Yang's name, ensuring absolute privacy and security. I was still dressed in a sharp suit, with no makeup, my expression cold and detached. I only had Xiao Wei and Zhu Yang with me. Su Man was in the next room, monitoring everything through surveillance to ensure nothing went wrong. He Jingxiao arrived alone, looking even more haggard than the last time I saw him. With sunken eyes and unkempt stubble, his expensive suit hung loosely on his frame. When he saw me, his eyes lit up for a moment before being overwhelmed by deeper pain and complex emotions. His lawyer followed behind him, looking grave. Both sides took their seats without any pleasantries. Xiao Wei directly pushed the revised divorce agreement across the table to the other side. The terms were clear. Both parties agreed to a voluntary divorce, with the division of marital property. My share had long been independent and was almost irrelevant. The promised custody rights were entirely mine. He Jingxiao would pay a substantial one-time alimony until the child reached adulthood and voluntarily relinquished all visitation rights. This was the key point. There would be no further financial or legal disputes between the parties. He Jingxiao didn't even glance at the agreement. His eyes remained fixed on me, his voice hoarse. It's too harsh, Cheng Yu. Do we really have to do this? Nuo is my son too. You can't even let me see him, Mr. Please focus on discussing the terms of the agreement. I interrupted him. All business. I know I was wrong. I deserve to die 1,000 deaths. He Jingxiao's emotions suddenly flared up. He leaned forward, his hands pressed against the table, tears welling in his bloodshot eyes. These past 3 years have been worse than death for me. I've regretted it every single day. Seeing Nuo breaks my heart. Cheng Yu, please give me a chance to make it up to you, not for my sake, but for Nuo. He needs a complete family, a father, a complete family. I felt as though I had heard the most ridiculous thing. He Jingxiao, from the moment you chose to protect Qin Ru during the avalanche, our family was shattered. You were the one who broke it with your own hands. As for a father, I sneered. A man who could abandon his wife and unborn child in a life-or-death moment, what right does he have to be a father? Nuo has lived well without a father for the past 3 years, and he will continue to do so. I was confused at the time. It was an instinctive reaction. He Jingxiao clutched his hair in agony. I truly didn't know you were pregnant. If I had known, there is no if, I said firmly. Your instinctive reaction was the truest choice of your heart. That choice made it impossible for me and my child to ever trust you again. He Jingxiao seemed to have all the strength drained from him. He slumped back into his chair, tears streaming down his face, muttering to himself, I was wrong. I truly know I was wrong. What do I have to do for you to forgive me? Tell me. Just tell me. I'm willing to do anything. I've sent Qin Ru away. I'm dealing with the business troubles. I'll give you the entire He Corporation. Just come back. Just let me see Nuo. He did indeed look remorseful and tormented. If it had been me 3 years ago, I might have softened, but now, my heart was nothing but a cold, unyielding rock. He Jingxiao, I spoke slowly, my voice echoing clearly in the quiet room. I don't need your repentance. He lifted his tear-filled eyes, looking at me in confusion. But I need justice. I stared straight at him, enunciating each word with absolute clarity. What you owe me and what you owe Nuo cannot be repaid with a few tears and apologies. The debt of emotions is something you can never repay, and I have no interest in it. I signaled to Xiao Wei, who took another document from her briefcase and placed it in front of He Jingxiao. It was a draft of a share transfer agreement. I want 50% of the shares in the He Group, I stated calmly, laying out my terms, not as a gift, but as compensation for the emotional damages you caused to me and Nuo, for the child support, and as the price for your negligence over the past 3 years. You will transfer them voluntarily. Of these, 20% will be directly registered under Nuo's name, to be managed by me until he comes of age. The remaining 30% will be registered under my name. You can retain operational control, but major decisions must have my approval. Alternatively, you can choose to buy me out, and I'll walk away. Take the money and leave, He Jingxiao's lawyer gasped, looking at me in shock, then at He Jingxiao. He Jingxiao himself was completely stunned. He stared blankly at the draft agreement, as if he hadn't understood my words. 50% of the shares, this was almost like carving out half of the He Group's empire. It was far more devastating than simply demanding money. It meant I would permanently become a significant shareholder in the He Group, potentially even affecting the He family's control. You want shares in the He Group? He Jingxiao's voice was hoarse. Yes, I nodded. This is the only thing you can give me, and I believe it's the most appropriate compensation. Use it to sever all ties between you, me, and Wonuo, past and future. Sign it, and from then on, you and I will have no connection. You and Wonuo will have no legal ties either. If you don't sign, I paused, my gaze sharp as a knife. We'll meet in court. The video of the avalanche, Qin Ru's testimony, and the troubles in your business, I'll make sure they all become the final straw that breaks the He Group's back. By then, what you lose might not be just 50% of the shares. I gave him a choice, but it was a dead end. Either cut your losses willingly, or wait passively for ruin. He Jingxiao's face turned ashen, his hands trembling as he picked up the draft agreement. He stared at it for a long time. The room was eerily quiet, filled only with his heavy breathing. His eyes shifted between the agreement and my face, filled with struggle, pain, resentment, and a deep sense of despair. He knew I meant what I said. I was no longer the woman he could control. The cards I held were enough to drag him and his precious He empire into the abyss. Finally, the flicker of resistance in his eyes died out, replaced by endless exhaustion and resignation. He lifted his bloodshot eyes to look at me, his voice raspy like an old, broken bellows. If I sign this, will you really never let me see Wonuo again? Yes, I replied without a moment's hesitation. He closed his eyes, and 2 lines of murky tears slid down. After a long while, he opened his eyes and nodded with difficulty to the lawyer beside him, his voice barely audible. Bring the pen. The lawyer seemed about to speak but stopped himself. Seeing He Jingxiao's ashen face, he sighed and finally handed over the pen. He Jingxiao gripped the pen, his hand trembling violently. He glanced at the name Cheng Nuo on the agreement, then looked at me. That look contained too many unspeakable things. Then he took a deep breath, as if mustering every ounce of his strength, and signed his name on the equity transfer agreement and the divorce agreement that relinquished all visitation rights. The sound of the pen scratching across the paper was soft and rustling, like the final note of a grand funeral. After signing, he seemed to age 10 years in an instant, his back hunched, all vitality drained from him. I collected the signed agreements, checked them for accuracy, and handed them to Qiao Wei. Then I stood up without looking at He Jingxiao again. Chengyu, she called out behind me with her last bit of strength. I didn't turn back. Take care, I said, leaving only those 2 words, cold and detached. Then I pushed open the conference room door and walked out. The sunlight outside was blinding, yet it couldn't warm something that had already frozen over. Su Man and Ju Yang approached, and seeing my expression, they breathed a sigh of relief. Is it over? Su Man asked. I nodded, feeling an unprecedented sense of relief and liberation, not happiness, but the emptiness of finally setting down a heavy burden. We quickly left the club, left Shanghai. This time, it was truly a final farewell. Back in Zurich, life continued peacefully. News of He Jingxiao signing the agreement spread within a very small circle, causing quite a stir, but it was soon overshadowed by new business gossip. The He Group completed the announcement of the equity change, with official and vague wording. I didn't interfere with the He Group's operations, but the income and influence brought by that equity provided the most solid guarantee for Cheng Nuo's and my future. Cheng Nuo grew day by day, clever and lively, like a little son. He never asked about his father. His world was filled with his mother, his godmother, Uncle Ju Yang, Mrs. Margaret, the little beetles in the garden, and the white clouds in the sky. It was full and happy. The Wish brand developed better and better. I no longer confined myself to stories of personal pain. My design themes became broader and deeper, earning more respect and market recognition. Occasionally, I would see news about He Jingxiao in financial reports. He barely managed to stabilize the He Group's situation, but his edge was gone, and he became increasingly quiet and low-key. Qin Ru's case was decided, and she received the punishment she deserved. The He family seemed to gradually accept the situation, no longer trying to contact or disturb us. I had finally drawn a clear line with the past. It was another clear afternoon in the Alps. I took Cheng Nuo for a picnic in the garden. He was earnestly trying to cut fruit with a plastic knife, his little face serious. Mom, what does wish mean? He suddenly asked, looking up. I patted his head and smiled. It's a wish, and also a promise. It's Mom's promise to you, and Mom's promise to herself. Then what is Mom's wish? I looked into his clear, innocent eyes. The sunlight fell on his long eyelashes, gilding them with a golden edge. "Mom's wish," I said, pulling him into my arms and gazing at the majestic, serene snow-capped mountains in the distance, "is to live peacefully with Nuo Nuo, live freely and bravely, explore a wider world, do what you love, and never be trapped by wind and snow again." The promise seemed half understood, but she nodded earnestly and wrapped her arms around my neck. "Nuo Nuo and Memar are together, just fine, together." A gentle breeze passes by, and Edelweiss sways softly at the rounded corners, fragile yet rooted in ice and snow, blooming year after year. Those once collapsed snowy mountains, those piercing colds, are all left behind in the seasons past, while ahead lies the long, warm spring and summer that belong to me and the promise.